and that child and doing something together.
Our regular viewers know that I am a big supporter of intergenerational programs. That to me is the best of all, where a youngster can look at grandma and grandpa and feel connected to them and participate in their life. And as you know, that's a two-way street. It helps improve everybody's attitude.
Absolutely.
Now, we're going to be giving contact information, but before we put it up on the screen, is it easy to contact you and for people to make themselves available and to register?
Yeah, it's very easy. The best way to do it is to go to our website,
Yes.
which is www.pasadenaseniorcenter.org.
Okay.
And
all one word,
all
of
one
course,
word,
lowercase,
all lowercase,
Pasadena Senior Center.
.org.
.org. All right.
And then follow the link to Senior Olympics.
I got you.
And will have email, it'll have phone numbers. We're extremely accessible.
Well, let's do a brief sketch some of the games. You've mentioned 26 events, like bowling.
You start in the alphabet on A and you work down to E.
I
So
see. Okay.
Start with archery.
Archery. All right.
Go to badminton, bowling, billiards.
Oh, this is like a test here.
Golf, powerlifting, race walk, road walk, road race, and there is a difference between race walk and the road race. Swimming, softball, co-ed softball, track and field, table tennis, volleyball,
Wrestling?
powerlifting,
Powerlifting, that's what I was thinking.
Wow.
cycling,
Fun.
and I must have missed one, but rope climb, push-ups, and pull-ups.
Right.
So maybe I think that's going to be awful
There we
close to
are.
the 26.
Well,
yeah.
let me give you a visual here. Aging in L.A. visited the swimming competition held at the AAF Rose Bowl Aquatic Center in Pasadena. So let's all take a look at some of the participants.
We're from Tuolumne County Aquatic Masters, and we are here supporting our Miwok Indian sister, Zandra Belts. And Zandra is the only Native American swimmer in Pacific Masters. And this is an ancient drum, actually, and a Miwok artifact. And when Zandra swims, we always play the drum for her so she can feel her ancient vibrations and swim to the joy and rhythm of the drum in the water.
A longtime participant at the Senior Olympics, Vivian Stansel is visually impaired, but that doesn't stop her from taking part in the games. We asked her what prompted her to start swimming.
I weighed so much, and the doctor told me that if I didn't get the weight off, that I wouldn't see my 60th birthday. I wouldn't see my grandchildren. And so I've been practicing and making mistakes and doing well. And I think this is great for me because it gives me something to look for in life. I tell other people about the Senior Olympics. I'm visually impaired, and it's called retinitis pigmentosus, and it's only 1,000 cases in the United States. They don't have a cure for it at the moment. I'm here to encourage other people to get involved, regardless of from 9 to 99.
Wow, what a great time. That's a very effective person there. Good on Vivian.
Very inspiring.
Now, we'll see, talk to some other competitors later in the program, but it's not always about winning, is it? Sometimes people can sort of re-engage with life by being involved in sports.
Yeah, I think it's that. It's about participating. I think that's the most important thing, that they get out there and do it. What we find, and I know Kathy would agree to it, are the friendships that are being developed through this, and the camaraderie, and
That's a very important part.
Yeah, you could walk into a track, 15 years ago, and all of a sudden, Kathy and Bert now have this whole other extended family in the track club, and I think that's almost more important than winning the medal.
Are there volunteer opportunities too? I mean, every organization is short volunteers. Someone, to pardon the pun, can sort of dip their toe in, so to speak.
Absolutely. We've had a number of people that have volunteered just wanting to see what it's like.
Right.
And then the next year they'll come out and do it. I think to some it's intimidating.
Well, sure.
You're exposing yourself.
Of course.
You're putting yourself on the line. So that's a great way to just get your feet wet on it.
Okay. Do you find yourself sort of planning your year around the various events? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, now, as a statewide organization, are the meets held all up and down the state?
Right now they're held in, I believe it's 8 communities. Between mostly here in Southern California. There are 2 in Northern California right now, and the other 6 here in Southern California.
Okay, well, excuse me, it's time for a short break. When we return, we'll resume our discussion of the California State Senior Olympics. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, buddy! Don't you know you should never leave a cooking pan unattended? And a working smoke detector can warn you of a fire. Like the one behind me. My hero!
Next time, listen to the ball. Have a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher that work.
How'd you know?
The ball called.
Before approaching an intersection, so that's why 2 wrong turns don't make a right turn. Now let's learn about tailgating.
Hey, that's how I got my ticket.
You got a ticket for tailgating? That's not good. That can be really annoying.
Doesn't get you there any faster.
It leaves you no distance to brake.
Which makes it easier to get into a crash.
And it also may increase your insurance premium. And I hate tailgaters.
Tailgating causes crashes. Back off. Watch the road.
Welcome back to Aging in L.A. Our topic today, the California State Senior Olympics held recently in the Los Angeles area. Our guests are event organizer Cynthia Rosedale and athlete Kathy Bergen. Thank you again for joining us. We were just discussing not only the volunteer help that's needed to run something. I mean, track meet takes a lot of people, but this is a .org. This is a foundation, so donations are important as well.
We could not run or do what we do. We couldn't run the event without significant sponsorship, and I would say probably 25% of the people who participate donate in some.
Right.
And we're nonprofit, so it's all tax
deductible. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's an expensive event to run.
I'm
Our
sure.
budget is about, it runs depending upon a qualifying or non-qualifying year, but the budget runs about $95,000.
I gotcha. Well, that's a drop in the bucket for Nike.
We would love it, absolutely.
Well, Mr. Knight, if you're listening, this is a
Please.
Actually, it's a good cause.
It's a great cause.
But with track and field, there's not much expense beyond a good set of sneakers and
Well, I believe the expense to the organization is for the officials, for the venue,
of course.
for the certification. I think it has
Right. No, I
sanction.
understand that. But for the individual competitor, I mean,
Right.
if you're race walking, what do you need? A pair of shorts and a tank
Right.
top, right?
Very unlike golf, where golf is
Right.
Whoa.
very, equipment-wise.
Brutally
Or
expensive.
cycling. Some of our cyclers,
Yeah.
their bikes are worth in the neighborhood of $5,000.
I know, yeah. But they
amazing.
are amazing. These
Yeah,
carbon
they are.
fiber weigh 5 pounds.
Right.
That's really astonishing. Now, in the first half of our program, we watched the swimming competition. Let's take a look at senior athletes competing in racquetball, badminton, basketball, and bowling events. "86-year-old Bill Tom competed in the Worldwide Olympics in 1956. Then as a senior, he took up badminton.
I teach junior high school here for 8 years. One of the colleagues, he played badminton. So at noontime, he said, "Hey, Mr. Tom, come and play some game at noon. We'll pay for ice cream after lunch." I was buying him ice cream all semester. Then the year I went to Taiwan, I learned a few things. That's the Asian game. I came back, he buying me ice cream.
Wow, that looks like fun. It seems that they're having a good time.
They love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so many that look forward to it every year.
Well, I'm sure. And then, like you, Kathy, you can look to really having an edge when you hit that next age qualifying level.
But the Pasadena Senior Games was always my favorite.
Yeah.
I think because of the wonderful experience we had for the first time when I met Cynthia and several other the competitors that I'm still seeing now.
Well, how many events do you participate in per year?
Track meets?
Mm-hmm.
Probably about 10 when I'm healthy.
Wow, that's great. Now, I would imagine you have to have some special health concerns. I mean, you want people to be fit, obviously, going into this, but sports injuries are common at any age.
They're very common. And one of the prerequisites that we have at all the high-profile events is have emergency medical team and staff
Good.
on site. Yeah.
That's very important.
And they're hidden things. I mean, we have had a couple of people, we've lost a couple of people.
Right, but people shouldn't be intimidated by that. I mean,
Absolutely not.
you get up in the morning and you can fall in the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing that happened this year is a woman basketball player broke a fingernail.
Oh my
Not
gosh.
one word, that's, yeah.
A calamity.
It was. For
It
her,
can
it was.
be. Well, before we leave, again, the contact information to reach you, Cynthia.
Is the website at
Yes.
www.pasadenaseniorcenter.org, or they can email me at cynthiar@pasadenaseniorcenter.org.
Fabulous. Unfortunately, our time is up for today's Aging in LA program. Thanks so much to our guests from the California State Olympics program, event organizer Cynthia Rosedale, and world-class athlete Kathy Bergen. And now, it's time for today's Senior Stat Shot. For older adults and seniors who want to stay healthy and independent, the National Institute of Health recommends 4 types of exercises: strength and weight-bearing exercises to build muscle and increase metabolism, balance exercises to improve posture, strengthen muscles, and help prevent falls, stretching exercises to improve freedom of movement, then endurance exercises such as walking and swimming to improve heart health and increase metabolism. Always check with your doctor before starting an exercise program. Now, if you are interested in trying a particular sport or activity, join a club and enjoy the company of like-minded adults who enjoy the same activity. Many clubs will offer you a free trial period so that you can find out if it's right for you. Find inexpensive or free exercise classes for older adults at your local senior centers, YMCAs, and community colleges. Try to be active for at least 30 minutes each day, walking your dog, doing yard work, walking around the mall, and even doing housework or gardening will help. Gentle yoga and Tai Chi can be good for the mind as well as the body. And that's today's Senior Stat Shot. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView, Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life. And also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. Now, we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and your ideas for future programs. Please give us a call. The number's right there on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you the next time. Cynthia, thank you so much for making time.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head. What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today.
Hi, this is Carretero Family.
We are from East Los Angeles, Boyle Heights. You're watching Channel 35, our city, our channel!
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, May 4th, 2011. We're here in the John Farrar Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I want to welcome members of the public who have joined us today in the audience and in our remote locations in San Pedro and Van Nuys. I'm City Council President Eric Garcetti, joined by my colleagues who are here on time, Council Members Alarcon and Cardenas, Labange and Perry, Rosendahl and Wesson. That brings us to 7 members. We are awaiting 3 more members to make 10 or 2/3 of our 15-member body, which would constitute a quorum and allow us to begin business. So Council Members Hahn and Weezer, Koretz and Parks, Reyes and Smith and Zine, if you'll please join us as soon as possible so we can begin the meeting. In the meantime, we want to also welcome our viewers on Channel 35, which broadcasts these meetings live on our city's cable system and rebroadcast them each evening, also on Channel 35. We're available not only in person here, but as I mentioned, in San Pedro and Van Nuys, if that's closer to where you live, to save you a little gas and a little time. And you can also testify remotely from there on any items which are of interest to you. But we're also available online for your convenience, and that address is lacity.org. Click on the links on the left side, and we have live streaming webcasts of these council meetings, searchable indexes of all of the items that we have before us, and all the supporting materials and agendas for these meetings, which council members receive, are also available for the public's enjoyment as well. Finally, you can use your telephone and call into council phone, which is 213-621-CITY. That's 213-621-CITY, and listen into the council meetings. That service is also available for our committee meetings. Our agendas are made available 72 hours in advance or 24 hours in advance for our special meeting items. Those are posted in city buildings and made available online. For any special meeting items, those are made available 24 hours in advance in compliance with the state's Brown Act. Also, in compliance with the state's Brown Act, we have public testimony on items, either in committee or here in the full council. All the items before us today are split into two sections of items that have already had public hearings or those that have not yet. If you'd like to fill out a speaker card for any of those, please do in the back or in Van Nuys and San Pedro. Hand that to our sergeants at arms or our city staff, and we'll be sure to get you in the mix, although any items that have already had a public hearing require a reopening of that by the members of the council. Any item that's not yet had a hearing will automatically be triggered by a card from the public. We are awaiting a few more members. Thank you. Mr. Zine is now here and Mr. Reyes is here, so please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 10 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Rosendahl moves and Mr. Reyes seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Zine moves and Mr. Cardenas seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. Ms. Perry, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I'm obliged to make the following announcement at the beginning of the council meeting regarding Council File 10-1256 regarding the Grand Avenue project was advertised to be heard by the City Council on Wednesday, March 4th, 2011. However, the item will be heard on Friday, May 6th, 2011 at 10 a.m. Thank you for allowing me to do this announcement at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. City Attorney?
Just, Ms. Perry said March 4th.
Yes,
I believe she meant May 4th.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. Smith is here. If we can please clock him in as well. If we can run through the agenda for the items that are before us today, still awaiting Mr. Koretz and Mr. Parks, and I believe Ms. Hahn is going to be here, even though she is excused to be away. First items, please.
Very good, Mr. President. Items 1 through 6 are items noticed for a public hearing.
Okay. Let's hold on those. Do we have cards on any of those?
We do have cards on number 1 at this point in time.
On number 1. We'll call that special for cards in the public. We'll close the other public hearings, and let's hold those 2 through 6 on the desk until we have one more council member. Next items, please.
Items 7 through 14 are items for which public hearings have been held. The committee report for item 9 has been submitted and distributed to council for its consideration. There is a request from member to continue item 13 to May 11, as well as to call item number 7 forthwith.
Okay. Let's go ahead and continue 13 to the 11th. And Mr. Cardenas, number 9.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Item 9 special, please.
Okay. Any other specials, colleagues? Number 8 from Mr. Labange. 10 for Mr. Alarcon. And let's hold 7 special while we're waiting a 12th member as we wait Mr. Koretz and Mr. Parks. Mr. Weezer?
No, 13.
13 was continued till May 11th?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. And let's take up the 11, 12, and 14, please. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. Next items, please.
Mr. President, items 15 through 19 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. Do we have any cards on these items?
Sir, before doing so, there's been a request from a member to continue item 19 to May 11th.
Okay, is there any objection on 19th to continue that to the 11th of May, item 19? No objection, so ordered. And do we have cards on any of these?
Yes, sir, we do. We have cards on 15, 16, and 18.
Okay. Any specials, Mr. Weezer? Would you like to also call it special on top of the cards?
18.
18, okay. We'll also call it special for Mr. Weezer. Okay. Let's go ahead on the balance, which is just, I think, number 17. Please prepare the roll on 17 and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Next items. I think,
Mr. President, items 20 through 22 are items noticed for closed session. Would you like to hold them on the desk?
Mr. Smith?
Say item 20 and 22 are workers' comp cases. We normally have been passing those through unless city attorney has an objection to that.
No, unless there's a request to discuss any of them in closed session.
Mr. Mr. Zine?
Mr. President, I reviewed 2021 and 22. All three of them are matters I discussed with the Deputy City Attorney handling that, and I would recommend we move those forward and not have them closed session.
Okay. Let's vote on those individually. I think some people want to vote differently on different ones. So
2021 and 22.
Let's take 20 first.
Very good, sir. There's item number 20. There's a recommendation for settlement through a stipulated award in the total amount of $195,299.98, plus a life pension at the weekly rate of $162.34, payable at the conclusion of permanent disability payments, with an estimated value of $109,741.84 in the case entitled Randy Nunez versus City of Los Angeles.
Okay, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on 20. Please open the roll, close the roll, and if you can add Ms. Hahn, she's in the room real quick before you tabulate the vote, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, item 21, please.
Very good, sir. There's a recommendation for settlement through stipulated awards in an aggregate total settlement amount of $123,172.29. After taking credit for permanent disability advances, the aggregate new money payout will be $86,790.47 in the case entitled Gene Gallagher versus City of Los Angeles.
Okay, please open the roll on item 21. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, that is approved as well. On item 22, please.
Mr. President, there is a recommendation for settlement through a compromise and release dependency claim in the total amount of $250,000 in the case entitled Edward McKeon, deceased, versus City of Los Angeles.
Okay, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on that item as well and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If we can take up items 2 through 7, now that we have 12 members. Let's go ahead and take a vote on those ordinances. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved. If there's no objection, we'll send 7 forthwith. If we can go to the next items, please.
Very good. Mr. President, on the continuation agenda, items 23 and 25 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, if there's no objection to consideration, those are before us. So we have cards on 23 and 24. Anybody wishing to call 25 special? As we've stated, there are cards on 23 and 24. Please listen closely, Mr. Walsh. 25 is what is before us. Anybody wishing to call 25 special? If not, please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, that is approved as well. We'll call, before we go to public comment, we have 2 items before that. Item number 9 first. Mr. Cardenas, if you'd like to take up item number 9, we can do that. I'd like to call on you on that item. We may pause that item depending. We have the visit from the ambassador of the African Union, but why don't we go ahead and start on item number 9, and we'll see if she arrives shortly.
Staff is here.
Mr. Cardenas.
And also ask the CLA to ask them to distribute it.
There you go.
Ask them to distribute the memo.
Could we? Thank you, Mr. President. We're on item number 9. Thank you so much. Could we have the staff come forward to present on this item? This item is relative to the City of Los Angeles, the government of the City of Los Angeles, making sure that we reduce our cell phone cost and improve our efficiency on cell phone usage. And the reason why I say both of those, as a matter of fact, is we had an announcement by the new governor of the state of California claiming that the state of California could save $20 million if they would just cut down the number of cell phones being used by government employees. Yet at the same time, the City of Los Angeles staff had already embarked on making sure that we do two things. One, that we evaluate who does need a cell phone, and then secondly, that we reduce the cost of the cell phone usage, and then third, that we make sure that overall we reduce the cost of cell phone usage throughout the city in raw dollars. So that being the objectives, I'd like the staff to comment on where we are at today, and if you could give an example of one department that has converted over to new contracts, less expensive contracts, and whether or not that department has more cell phones in use or less, and whether or not that department is actually saving the city money. Go ahead.
ITA. It's not working. Kevin Crawford, ITA. We have reviewed the contracts that were in place for the city, mainly the WSCO, Western State Contracting Alliance, and the CWC contracts, looking to see if there were efficiencies that we could bring to bear within those contracts. And in doing so, we also reviewed the usage within our department, ITA, to see how the minutes were being used and so on and so forth. The department was actually using standard minute plans before we started migrating. We found that for our usage, flat rate plans or per minute use plans would be much better. So what we have done is, over the past 4 months, we have migrated all minute plans to flat rate plans. In doing so, we have reduced significantly the cost of those phones. We also reviewed our pager system and found that zero-cost phones, meaning that there is no upfront charge, you only pay per minute, was actually cheaper than those pagers. In that, we reviewed the per minute usage for those phones overnight and found that the average usage is about 50 minutes a month, or $2.50 with the charge, which is 25% of the original charge of the pager. Overall, in the department, we have increased our cell phones by 50%, and in the year that we were migrating to the new plans, we've already decreased the overall charges in the department by 30% and expect it to be over 50% for a full year of usage.
Okay, so you said something that seems to be counterintuitive from what, for example, our governor said in one statement. And I must say that, with all due respect to the governor, he did get a lot of top-of-the-fold press around the state of California when he announced that he thought or thinks that he can actually reduce the state tax dollars being used for cell phones by state workers by as much as $20 million a year. We have yet to see whether or not that is going to take place. We have yet to see that simple announcement that he made is actually going to result in a reduction of tax dollar usage. Yet at the same time, you said something that doesn't seem to make sense. So why don't you clarify for the taxpayers who are watching right now, why don't you clarify how you can increase the number of cell phones by 50% in your department, yet at the same time reduce the cost to the taxpayer by 30%?
In the agency, we have decreased the smartphones by 10% due to the reduced staffing that we have. However, in migrating people from pagers to zero-cost cell systems, we've actually increased the actual number of cell phones across the department. Those phones are at no cost unless we use them, and if we use them, they're 5 cents per minute. And as I said before, we went back and checked on that phones, and there are 80 of those in our department now. The average usage is about 50 cents per minute, which is 25% of the cost of the pagers.
So did we go from using people like AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, etc., and then go to some new cut rate, fly-by-night company, or are we still using some of the biggest providers in the industry?
We're using one of the providers listed.
But the thing is, the new contracts, we still give departments the option to use AT&T, we still give departments the option to use Sprint, we still give departments the option to use T-Mobile, Verizon. These are contracts that are better, more advantageous to the user, which is us, the City of LA, than before, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Debbie Ramos, Department of General Services. We are actually using the same contracts that we were using previously. We're only using them much smarter. We found that by diving into all the details of the contracts, there were a lot more options available to us. Department of General Services has also made a switch in the last few months, and we've taken a strategy or an approach totally different from what ITA has based on what our requirements are. So we are more familiar, we've become more familiar with all the options available to us. We're getting the best rates possible. We did check with the proprietary departments, and they are also using the same contracts. So as a city in whole, we are using the plans, and like I said, we are becoming more familiar with the various options because there's a catalog of options that we can use, from flat rate to something similar to the family plans that people are aware of?
So if we were to go back to a one-size-fits-all, we would definitely be wasting city money.
Yes.
Yes. So we're not using a one-size-fits-all.
No, we're optimizing the contracts as a whole, basically putting together plans that meet our requirements in order to become more efficient and more effective in terms of...
Whereas before, and I'll push my button again, Mr. President, whereas before we may have had a department where they had, say, 50 cell phones, and the average cell phone was easily, after taxes and all the billing on that one thing, the average might have been $70, $80 per. Now what we're realizing in that same department, somebody still might use a cell phone a lot and actually have an $80 billing a month, but they're using it to the maximum ability. But at the same time, somebody in that same department might have a billing that might be $17, $18 all in, which means that we're actually saving about $60 on that one person because we are no longer using a one-size-fits-all.
Correct.
Okay. I'll push my button again, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The issue that we discussed yesterday in committee on this particular matter, there was a motion that I submitted. It was item number 29. I don't have the date. March 2nd, 2011, regarding the 10% reduction. Phones excluding the fire and police department. Where did that motion go as far as IT and the phone distribution in the city of Los Angeles?
Within ITA, we reviewed all of the phones that we had, and as I said, we actually did do a 10% reduction through staffing reduction.
It wasn't IT. It was all departments, not just
right.
IT.
Yeah. Right. Up until now, we're working with GSD right now. ITA has controlled the cell phones within ITA, and now we're working with GSD, and we will be sharing some of those requirements in the contract where ITA will be doing reviews citywide.
I understand contracts, but there's also that request for a reduction.
Right.
If it's necessary, if it's not necessary, if it's optional. We were looking at that to have a reduction in the number of phones. Obviously, would reduce the cost, and I understand from yesterday's committee meeting, we have fewer employees that have cell phones, but we have more cell phones in use, which didn't really match out successfully.
We actually are in the process of establishing criteria and working together to determine, who needs a cell phone.
So it's a work in progress.
Exactly.
So we don't have an answer yet, but we're still trying to achieve that goal.
Exactly.
To all departments, including the IT, et cetera, but excluding police and fire for their particular emergency situations.
Okay, yes.
That's what we need to know. So I want to make sure it didn't fall off the map. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
A little closer when you talk. Yeah, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, so if you can put the mic a little closer, we'd appreciate it. The basic fact of the matter is I think this is a great opportunity for us to thank our thinking city staff for actually responding to the policymakers in the city when we're looking at budget cuts in various areas and we're realizing that there are ways in which we can actually save tax dollars, be more efficient, and get more done with less. This is a perfect example where a department has increased the number of cell phone usage by 50%, yet decreased the cost by 30%. We need to look for savings in every place. Every politician talks about that, but with all due respect, it's up to the staff of the city to actually make those a reality. And in this case, we're actually making it a reality. And at the same time, I want to make sure that we don't try to do things by headline, like the governor did, and just announce that we can actually save X amount of dollars or X amount of percentage without even knowing whether or not it can be done or how it's going to be done. This is something that's been in the works for just over a year, but I also want to compliment the staff. I think that we're going to see a tremendous drop in the amount of dollars being expended on cell phone use and communication use throughout the city, as we've eliminated some pagers, at least in one department, and that was another expense. But at the same time, it's really important for us to understand that rather than badgering our staff or beating up people for something that politicians might get as an idea, what we should do is ask of our employees, what can be done? What can be done within your department? How are you doing your job? How can you do it better and more efficiently? And that's exactly what we see here. One of the things that we have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, I think that all of us have actually been raised on the adage that if you save the pennies, the dollars will follow. But in this particular case, what we're watching is department by department, as they save a few $1,000s per department, perhaps tens of thousands of dollars per department per year, the millions will follow. And that's exactly what's going on here. I just want to thank the staff for being responsible, for being responsive, And also, I want to make sure that people understand that you have already started to curtail the number of dollars that are being used by city employees for cell phone usage over the last 2 years already. But what we're seeing here, we're now getting to the point where we're going to see a drastic reduction in the number of dollars being used for cell phone usage, but we're also going to see better production. As with the IT department, they realize by giving more cell phones and taking away the pagers, they're actually spending less dollars. But at the same time, they're getting better, more accurate communication. And when you look at the amount of dollars being saved, perhaps by somebody making $20, $30, $40 an hour that doesn't have to drive back to the office to communicate with somebody, they can actually do it out in the field. That is efficiency in dollars. That's what people expect from government. And I think this is a perfect example where we're not looking for headlines. We're just looking on making sure that we save the tax dollar of the tax-paying public. So thank you very much.
Mr. Labange.
ITA question. Before cell phones, in city vehicles were a radio. Were you familiar with that process at all?
Yes, sir.
And then they would call the radio room in. And I just wanted to know, we still have a radio room, right, which is the 311? Would we ever want to try to implement some of that again? Because in the event, which there will be another earthquake, I hope not a bad one, but there'll be an earthquake, that communication system, unless the tower is knocked out, does function where the cell system may not. Have you looked into that at all?
We have
reinstituted in city vehicles what would be a civil, what was that called? A radio system. Right. Mr. Zion would know.
2150 to headquarters,
right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. What is it? Civil defense, or whether in the radio, because I'm thinking if we want to reduce costs, there's no cost other than the equipment. There's no airwave cost for that.
So we, in the process of reviewing, we were asked about the fact that some of our vehicles already have radios in them, and could that be the communication source versus a cell phone for that individual?
Right.
And so yes, that is part of the review process.
Great. Well, that's a good part of it. So also look for that for the city council and the mayor's staff, because there are eyes and ears that are out throughout the city. So that would be good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. That completes this matter. So the item's up for a vote, colleagues. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Hey, this is what I'm talking about. Okay? Zion.
I got that. I got one on my card, Mr. Labange. Mr. Garcetti, for one moment, item number 14 is asked to be reconsidered by Mr. Alarcon. Please open the roll, reconsideration for number 14. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, 14's up for reconsideration. Mr. Garcetti for an introduction. Mr. Parks?
Number 22 reconsidered.
Which one?
22 and added instruction.
22. Number 22 for reconsideration. Open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
All right, so 22 is also up for reconsideration. Thank you. Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We are very honored as a city council, to receive today in these chambers Ambassador Amina Saloum Ali, who is the permanent representative of the African Union to the United States of America, representing an entire continent here to the United States, a country which has had such close ties to the African continent throughout history, and the contributions and our abilities to be able to strengthen that relationship, to build trade, to build social, historical, artistic networks. Los Angeles is a great African city. We know this and we learn this every single day, whether it's a few years ago when suddenly the Congolese community came here and we realized we had 20 to 30,000 Congolese that live here. When we look at our vibrant little Ethiopia, which was one of the first named neighborhoods in the United States after an African country. And of course, the original pobladores, or settlers that created Los Angeles, Madam Ambassador, some of them traced, in fact, I think of the 44 people who founded the city, more than 20 of them traced their ancestry, 26 of them, thank you, Mr. Labange, 26 traced their ancestry back to Africa, even when this was a Spanish city. So it is very fitting that you are here today. Ambassador Ali speaks on behalf of the African Union and its member states on the African Union strategies to accelerate socioeconomic integration on the continent, to promote peace and stability, build partnerships between African governments and all segments of civil society, in particular focusing on women and youth. She is a native of Tanzania, where she held political office and also government positions, which distinguished herself. I am very proud to have lived in Africa, to have spent time in Tanzania as well. But she is here in Los Angeles to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Africa USA International Chamber to support and encourage all countries on the continent of Africa, which make up the 5 regions of the African Union, and to support and participate in this upcoming October 2011, the 2nd annual Pan-African Global Trade Conference here in this city. She's also here to recognize the African diaspora throughout the world as the 6th region of Africa. So in some ways, the African Union recognizes that this is an extension of the continent of Africa and as a major business and trade partner to the African continent. Ambassador Ali supports the African Diplomatic Corps also in their efforts to consolidate and strengthen partnership with both the executive and legislative branches of the United States, including building political constituencies in Washington. In doing so, she works to advance the goals and objectives of the African Union, hopefully not too many objections, as well as organizing the African diaspora to contribute back to the mother continent in socio-economic development as well. As I mentioned, she's from Tanzania, was actually born and raised on the island of Zanzibar, educated in India. She received her bachelor's degree there in economics and an MBA in marketing. And she has really distinguished herself not only in Asia, in Africa, but now in North America as well. 3 continents she's conquered, maybe a few more before her career is done as well. But we are really pleased. She is also the first woman ambassador of the African Union here to the United States, and she's committed to focusing also on women's rights and children's issues. She's the founder of Zanzibar Women Welfare Trust, an NGO that focuses specifically on supporting the development of women and children to combat devastating health issues like HIV/AIDS. So with that, Mr. Labange, our great unofficial ambassador as well, who chairs our sister city agreements. We've got a number in Africa. We've got Giza and Lusaka, and I know many others that have been looking at it in other places, but would you like to say a few words, and then we'll present this to the ambassador.
Special, Madam Ambassador, to have you at this spot. And many people have come to this spot, this building built in 1928. President-elects have spoken from here, heads of state have spoken from here, ambassadors from throughout the world. So it's so special to have you here. And Lusaka and Zambia is special in our heart as a sister city. And James Burke, the Special Deputy of Culture for Cultural Affairs. Give James a big hand for all that he does, filling in protocol. It's so honored to have all of us together here. So, Mr. President, I'm going to ask you to make the presentation.
Thank you. On behalf of the City of Angels here, I think we've got a couple of
Yes, Mr. Rosendahl and Ms. Perry. Mr. Rosendahl, then Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the pleasure of going through your great country. I took one of these long walks from Cairo, Egypt to Johannesburg, South Africa, and obviously I went through Ethiopia and Kenya and Tanzania and Zambia, Malawi and Mozambique and Zimbabwe and South Africa. And it's an honor to welcome you here. I think your challenge is obviously to bring the United States and Africa together in a more closer personal relationship. There are lots of issues that I know are on your mind and on our mind. And with Los Angeles being the melting pot and the blender of the earth, you will bump into people from all parts of Africa here. And it's a privilege to have you before our council today. Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
Madam Ambassador, I wanted to just rise to say that it's quite an inspiration to be able to see a woman of your stature continue to rise, not only on behalf of your country, but on behalf of the Union of all countries in Africa. And I'm pleased and I'm honored that you're here today. And I hope people who watch this take note of your contributions to not only to your union, but to the world and global politics as well. And your presence is an inspiration. Thank you.
Mr. Garcetti.
So on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, our mayor as well, we welcome Ambassador Amina Salim Ali, Ambassador of the African Union to the United States. Please join me in a round of applause for the Ambassador. Like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Mr. President, distinguished member of the council member. I would like to take this opportunity to to express my gratitude and appreciation. I'm humbled to stand in this podium today to speak on behalf of Africa to your distinguished representative, a member of the Council. I would like also to thank the members who praise our countries and who knows more about our countries, and also for the warm welcome we do receive. We've been invited here, and the reception has been so excellent, and I'm so excited to be here. As you know, we Africa now, we are moving toward development, and Africa is one of the fastest growing area, and we thought for us from Washington to come and touch base and greet our friends and partners here in the city of LA. So in that respect, we have a lot of common things we can do, and I went through the list of the sister city, and I think there is a need to increase more cities from Africa to have this sisterly relation. And this is the time, the atmosphere is very conducive, and we have a lot of business engagement with other continents, but we would like also our partners from the LA to be able to engage Africans to promote business, both for win-win sort of profit, so that we gain profit and our business partner here in LA will also gain profit. So thank you very much, and I hope I will come back again, and next time when I come, I'll bring a bigger delegation of the representative of the regional blocks. Regional blocks are the engine of development in Africa. So I will definitely entice them to come back to LA to meet these wonderful people, warm people of the LA and California. Thank you very much.
I just want to say, Mr. President, I'm so proud that Africa hosted the World Cup in South Africa, but I hope in the future the Olympic Games come to Africa. That in 2016 it's going to be in Rio, first time in South America, and after that let's come to Africa, because it would be great to bring the game. We're in Olympic City twice, so we wish that for you.
We are working for that.
Good job. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Einpris.
Thank you. Congratulations to you. Welcome to Los Angeles, our ambassador. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Mr. President, that takes council back to items called special or public comment on council's agenda.
We will do public comment, and we have a number of cards on public comment. We'll start out in the San Fernando Valley. Anthony Mitchell. Anthony Mitchell in the San Fernando Valley, and then Gary Parker in the San Fernando Valley in Van Nuys.
Hello, my name is Anthony Mitchell, IBW, Local 11. I'm an unemployed electrician, and I support Farmers Field. Thank you very much.
Gary Parker. Gary Parker in Van Nuys.
Yes, sir. My name is Gary Parker. I live in L.A. and I support Farmers Field. Let's bring jobs to L.A. Thank you much.
Thank you. That's our final card from Van Nuys. Let's come down to City Hall. Rafael Pena. Rafael Pena. There you go, sir.
Morning, City Council. Visualize a city like a dream. The buildings like mirrors of all colors, built in one day. The walls of one piece, light, strong, disaster-proof, of material like that of car bodies. The frames of beams joined by tubes, supported by platforms. $5,000 houses, amount of material determines price. Clean, fast, safe, flying cars that burn gas with hot metal to fly. Clean, safe, free power by turning a copper disc close to a magnet with gravity, hot air, light bulbs, magnets, wind, gray water, flywheels, balloons, fast, easy cooking, heating, cooling. 80% of water saved by shaping nozzle into a slit. It cleans through speed. It's heated through hot pipe. Clothes cleaned by wiping them. Dream bodies, happy, healthy, peaceful people. Fruit trees, vegetables everywhere in the city, free for all to eat. It took me an eternity of toil, thought, research, experiment, sacrifice to get it ready for the world to build. Only they can. All I can do is show them how. Free. It has no patents. Real solutions in housing, transportation, water, power, health. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. You know, you could all learn how to give a short, effective speech from the African ambassador. 15 minutes introducing a 2-minute speech. Great job, Africa. Terrible job, LA. Let's point out, there's a major scandal in this city, and that is the porno film made at parking enforcement. And Joel Grover, yesterday on Channel 4, gave the evidence that Price, who is the head of parking enforcement, knew all about it and covered it up. Where is he standing here? Now, the Officer Dancler, D-A-N-C-L-E-R, should be, in fact, he should be at this point under arrest for making a porno film. Oh, that's right. Porno films are politically correct as you try to destroy churches and you promote porno films. And incidentally, if you want to see the porno film, just go to any city library. This is the only library in America where you're allowed to see porn. And incidentally, you may enjoy it if you like interracial porn, as you watch the blonde woman being pawed by an African-American man. If you enjoy that, come here, we present it. Now, this is the only city council in America that allowed the Nazi Party to use their facilities last year on the steps of City Hall. No other City Hall. Now yesterday in the Times, what happened to the leader of that Nazi thing we had out here? And we had a big demonstration against it and none of you showed up. Neo-Nazi killed in Riverside. And who killed him? His son. And how old was his son? Under 12 years old. These are the people you're hanging out with. This is where you take Oscar money, Oscar Garcetti, you people, Hollywood Highlands.
Thank you, Wylon Spencer. Wylon Spencer, our next speaker, followed by Marcella Reed. Followed by Mario Perez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. I am an unemployed iron worker with local 460 Reinforcement Iron Workers. I preside in Norwalk, California. Having a football stadium in downtown will bring more business, conventions, and tourism to LA, which means more good jobs and a stronger local economy for everyone. We need the City Council to support this project, and also don't forget the Wilshire Grant Project. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you. Maricela Reed, followed by Mario Perez, followed by Juan Avila.
Hello, my name is Maricela Reed. I live in Bellflower, and I had to say I support a farming field. I work in different projects for 31 years, Staples Center, Motel Marine, and it has given me the opportunity to pay my house, take care of my family, and give me a good job and good benefits. We need the City Council to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Perez, followed by Juan Avila, followed by Eugene Hernandez. When I call your name, if you please come up to the podium, and that'll move this along a lot quicker. Mario Perez.
Council. I'm Mario Perez. I'm an employee. I'm a worker in Fairfield for 16 level. I'm here today to support the farm fields because I believe that having the football stadium is going to bring more middle-class jobs, and that means that we're going to have more jobs in the surrounding areas, like business, more buildings, convention centers, and I believe that is going to be a very good contribution to keep the city of LA working, and it's going to be a contribution to the economy of the city of LA, and a contribution to the happening of his people. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Avila, followed by Eugene Hernandez.
Good morning, City Council members. My name is Juan Avila, and I live in Riverside. I'm here to say that I support Farmers Field and Downtown Stadium proposal. I support this project because this project will create tens of thousands of good jobs to the middle class people. It will bring a better economy for the city of LA, and we need the City Council to support this project. Thank you.
Eugene Hernandez, followed by Dave Hancock.
Good morning, Mr. Council.
I'm referring to item number 14 of the consent calendar. I feel that this project has not been given adequate...
Excuse me, Mr. President, this item actually is on...
This item is scheduled to be heard, sir, so we can hold your card till then.
Okay.
That matter will be heard.
Yep, thank you.
We'll put it at number 14. Mr. Clerk, if I can have that card back, please. Okay, Dave Hancock?
Good morning, City Council members. My name is Dave Hancock. I'm a resident of Glendale. I've lived in Los Angeles for 46 years. I am in full support of the Farmers Field project. I remember when I first started watching football, the Rams came from St. Louis. They went back. Cleveland. The Raiders came from Oakland. They went back. We don't have a football team. I think it would be a good idea for us, Los Angeles, to have our own football team, because throughout the season, other games will be played here. I am a union glazer, and currently I'm unemployed. The trickle-down effect of financial benefits that I see at job sites are evident when a taco truck comes in and guys go out to eat. There's about a minimum of $150 spent on a breakfast between 12 guys, and that employs people of that area. And I think that the Farmers Field would bring a lot of revenue to the city of Glendale, city of Los Angeles, and help the city of Los Angeles get back on its feet. And so I'm in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Richard Robinson, followed by Dr. Williams.
Mr. President, members, first, I'm somewhat stymied by America's penchant for permitting Penthouse, Playboy, and Hustler to be sold in stores in plain sight. I'm old school. In echoing John, I'd like to say that anytime a child runs the risk of going into a public library, it's kind of ineffable to society has rules. We have to protect children in public libraries from pornography. But, Mr. President, members, John Quincy Adams says, let me get back to the point here, whenever or wherever the standard of freedom and independence has been or shall be unfurled, there will America's heart, her benedictions, and her prayers be. But she goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. She is the well-wisher to the freedom and independence of all. She is the champion and the vindicator, the vindication of her own. Sir, the coalition that has Gaddafi on the run should be in place only as long as needed. Committing ground troops in Libya or any other place. At this time, as was said, a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds. Now, Ralph Waldo Emerson, we have to stop exporting American-style freedom if we want the burqa.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Dr. Williams, followed by Arnold Sachs.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Oh, there's going to be a community meeting in CD1. It's regarding the North Spring Street Bridge improvements. There's supposed to be a discussion about its plans, and an important decision is going to be made about the future design of the bridge. And the community is invited to discuss the project. However, it's also by Caltrans, but it doesn't identify which bureau or which department is in charge of it, LADOT or Department of Public Works, but we've been told now that the Department of Public Works Bureau of Engineering is in charge of it. However, there's nothing on Caltrans's webpage anywhere regarding the project, although it has a Caltrans seal. It also has the seal of the City of Los Angeles. But try to find any document regarding it. There is none. Regarding what's going to be discussed, the agenda, what's going to be presented. But on the other side, they ask for comments. What does the public want on the bridge? Well, there were a whole bunch of meetings a year ago, 2 years ago, and this goes back to 2001. But we don't know what is being proposed. We don't know what is being done. We don't know what they want in the way of meaningful comments. So we're quite concerned. We have asked the Department of Public Works to provide us with some information, and they say, yeah, we'll provide it to you. To me? No. It should be to all of the public, the community of Lincoln Heights, Chinatown, Northeast LA. What's going on? We don't know. How can we make meaningful comments if there is no information before the meeting? So that we have to do it on the spur of the moment? This is not good planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold Sachs. Thank you. Hip-hop hat, Doctor, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. I'd like to thank the city attorney for correcting the Honorable HPJ, Jan Perry, when she announced the date of the hearings for the Grand Avenue project. But he didn't correct her yesterday when she gave her discussion regarding the DWP and having a meeting on a quarterly basis. And when they were leaving, she said, we'll see you in 6 months. So what happened to the quarterly basis? That being said, I support the project too for the stadium, but I don't support the city selling out. And again, the important part here is AEG is going to build the stadium, but AEG is not going to buy the team. And the reason the teams left the stadiums in Southern California is because they didn't own the stadiums. And they couldn't get the renovations that would allow them to take part in what we hear of today is a $9 billion program that they're fighting about. But you don't hear them talking about any of the people who actually work at the stadium or do the background work at the stadiums, the parking attendant and the concessionaires and all those people involved in it. They're not getting a slice of that $9 billion pie. That being said, Eagles get greener and eco-friendly stadium. You make sure that the stadium, according to this article, the Eagles have agreed to buy all their solar power for the next 20 years. They estimate that the project will bring annual reduction in carbon dioxide emissions that are equivalent to taking 41,000 cars off the road. You make sure that they're going to have turbines to provide energy. That being said, Mr. Weezar, this article in the LA Times, Atlanta revived streetcar, but not all on board. $72 million for a 2.6-mile rail line. Keep that in line for the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed Mojonian.
Respectable City Council members, dear fellow Angelinos, my name is Armenak Nurjanian, and I am a Liberal Democrat and human rights advocate. I proudly announce my candidacy to win the seat of California State Assembly next year, and I run an election campaign on principle of legal social justice, racial integration, and technological revolution. I need California patriots' help and support to raise funds to help me wage a Los Angeles-based campaign against wasteful spending and against corruption in Los Angeles government. I believe wasteful spending as well as gross, overrated salaries of council city members who rake in $178,000 a year, and which I demand we're cutting down was wages 50% and give us money to poor city workers. I also ask those police and firefighters union members, to support my electoral campaign because I'm going to save funds, save city coffers funds from being plundered, by those, illegal financing of Wilshire Grand Hotel. Also, call my phone number 323-445-1600 or write to my email address, freeliberal that day with tangible support. Texas spend liberal. I promise I will raise taxes against wealthy tax evaders, rich wealthy homeowners who make more than $60,000 a year, and the wealthy gasoline selling corporation 50%. I demand also I will actually create housing vouchers to expedite issuance of Section 8 housing vouchers to working poor California who stand in line for years. Also, I will also demand closing down so-called medical marijuana dispensaries and condemn was City Ordinance 181, 530, 181, 690 that actually legalize illegal sale of dope and violate the United States Controlled Substances Act. And I call to the police officers in this city to go and close down all those illegal medical marijuana dispensaries. Cause so much pain to city residents. Unless we want to get riots on their hands and unless increasing crime and declining public morality. I have a palpable support of 56% of California voters who rejected legalization of harmful narcotic marijuana last November, who rejected voted against Proposition 19, according to MSNBC report. I will fight freeway cutting with new commercial satellites and helicopter purchases. We will vote with higher taxes against the wealthy. And will supply also cellular phone satellite service for companies of the state of California in rural and rustic areas.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker and our final speaker on public comment in the San Fernando Valley, Miriam Fogler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Zine. I wanted to let the people know out there that those are all who have served the city for many years, and they would like to be able to remain here. The ones that didn't, the ones going to go out and vote for the health care, please vote for that. Vested health care, it's a good deal. It's a gem. We don't want to have the city have more problems. Okay, so we would like them to vote for this. It could help their families, because if they get sick or their children get sick or their wife gets sick, whatever, you don't know when you're going to retire, folks. You need to vote for that health care. I want them to know out there, okay, out in sanitation, okay, you need to vote for it. Okay, it's going to be worth it. It's going to pay off. It's a good investment. Okay? All right? And it's good for your department. Remember that. You want to invest in tomorrow for today. You know, today you got to take care of today, but you're worried you got to take care of tomorrow. So this is very good. And you have control over it. So please, I urge you to vote yes for the vested health care. Don't pass up the opportunity of a lifetime, because, I called Kaiser yesterday, $525 just for a single person a month. That's right, folks, $525. I want you to know that this is going to go up, because I called Kaiser and they wouldn't tell me, all right, because the costs keep going up, fuel costs, food costs, housing costs, and when you have a lot of bills already stuck in with your mortgage and everything, that adds up. So please, I urge you to vote yes on the 4% contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. And that completes our public comment for today. Mr. Clerk, let's go to number 18, please, and we'll turn the desk over to our Council President, Mr. Eric Garcetti.
Very good, sir. For clarification, motion 18A has been circulated for Council's consideration.
Okay, this was called special by Mr. Weezer. We'll recognize him first.
Yes, if we could hold that for a couple of items. We're working out some details on that.
Okay. Do you want to do the public speakers in the meantime? Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead then to the public speakers on this. We've got a very full stack here. First is Reverend James Lawson, Jr., who we always are honored to have here in council chambers. After him will be Reverend Sandra Richards. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and City Council. I'm very pleased to be here again on behalf of this resolution and on behalf of the La Plaza United Methodist Church. Let me begin by saying that the most profound values of the nations and of the civilizations across the last 30,000 years at least have not been market values, but human values. Those human values represent the wisdom of the 1 million or more years of the journey of this extraordinary human family of which we are all a part. Those values must be a significant part of public decision-making if we are to preserve ourselves and our world and our children for a posterity of justice and of liberty. I have marched on Wall Street with people from New York. And when one marches down Wall Street in New York City, the citadel of the wealth and the power of the economies of the earth, you suddenly, in the midst of Wall Street, the wall of huge buildings, come to a corner, and I do not remember the street corner, where suddenly you find not huge skyscrapers of wealth, but a very small Episcopal church, which is Trinity Episcopal Church. They represent the finest values of the human race for Wall Street. Now, I want to say that souls of that congregation gave the largest endowment of any congregation in the world decades ago, so they can hire the strongest and the best law firms in the world to defend their spot and to do their work.
Thank you.
La Plaza Church has no such wealth. And I insist that the City Council would do themselves and our people in Los Angeles a great favor if they would become the endowment to see to it that this people at La Plaza Church can continue to worship and pray and serve the community.
Thank you very much, Reverend. We have to try to keep the time as even as possible. We thank you very much. And Mr. Rosendahl, briefly.
Yes, just a point of personal privilege, Mr. President. Jim Lawson is one of the treasures of the nation. He was a close friend of Martin Luther King and played a major role in the civil rights movement. And when I did my television show, it was an honor and a privilege to interview him whenever he could come before us. He's truly a blessing to all of us in Los Angeles. The Reverend James Lawson. Bless you.
Certainly is. Thank you very much. Reverend Richards is next. After Reverend Richards will be Pastor Brittany Roberts and Reverend Mark Nakagawa.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. Thank you very much for your service to our city. I'm the Reverend Sandy Richards, pastor of First United Methodist Church of Los Angeles. We are the mother congregation and so of Methodists in Southern California. It is my job today to acquaint you with some of Los Angeles's history, which is also Methodist history. The first Methodist sermon was preached at the adobe home of Mr. J.G. Nichols in 1850. In 1852, Mr. Nichols would become the mayor of Los Angeles. By 1854, Reverend Adam Bland had purchased the El Dorado Saloon, took down the sign, and established a Methodist chapel and girls' school on the site of where Pico House is now. That's the first adaptive reuse that we know of in the city of Los Angeles. The first building occupied as a church by Methodists was also in 1854, located on Main Street near the old plaza. The congregation eventually would build a grander church at Hill and 6th, and in 1889, a congregation was established at La Plaza Olvera called Plaza Methodist Episcopal Church. In 1916, the Plaza Service Center was formally established, and it served the oppressed and those who were ignored by the wealthier denizens of Los Angeles. That service center served everyone, regardless of their race or nation of origin. Latino, Chinese, and Filipino workers who lived on the plaza were given health care, clean drinking water, and plain old human kindness. The history of the United Methodist Church and the history of Los Angeles go hand in glove. We were part and parcel of founding Goodwill Industries, In fact, that was founded at Plaza Olvera by Methodists in service of the people who were there. Also, such institutions that you've heard of, such as University of Southern California. So thank you very much, Councilmember Weezar, for bringing this forward for us, and please pass this resolution. Let us carry forward our work into our shared future. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Pastor Freddie Roberts is our next speaker.
Good morning. I'd actually like to share my time with my colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Klein. We are the Program Director and Executive Director of Clergy and Laity, United for Economic Justice, Los Angeles.
Does he have a card in as well? I'm sorry, just under the rules, we can't yield time. It's on there, but if he fills out a card, we'll make sure to get him in there. Don't worry.
Can I fill it out subsequently?
Yeah, do you want to use your time first,
Yeah, I
though?
want him to use my time.
You can't yield the time. Sorry, you can't yield the time. But do you want to say anything else yourself? I just want to make sure, and then we'll hand it over to the
I will
rabbi.
speak. I can't yield the time to you.
Okay, it's up to you.
We just have to keep that consistent. My apologies, but that's just one of the things we can't.
What I want to say is that Plaza United Methodist Church has served this city faithfully for over a century. People of this city who came here to build a great place where we all live now, built a church that serves the community in multiple ways. Through providing a place for sanctuary, for prayer, for being a stranger, a friend to the stranger, the immigrant, the traveler, the weary. And now they are being asked to sacrifice their home, the place that church members sweated and built with what little funds they had, a place that they wanted to have permanently. They're being asked to sacrifice that so the city can make a little bit of income. The idea that sacraments would now have a fee, that the church would have to pay $3,000 to access their building to do a baptism, that they would have to pay to hold worship in the church that they built, that they would have to pay to provide services for a community that so desperately needs it. I ask you not to overlook not only the historic value of this church, but the role that it's played in changing the way that we relate to those who come through the portal of our city at Union Station. We need to remember that being a city is not just about fancy new business opportunities. It's about creating a holistic society where all are cared for, where we value the greatest values, peace, love, human compassion, and justice, and that the church can play a role in preserving those values for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Mark, why don't you come forward, and then we'll get to you, Rabbi, right after Reverend Mark goes, then we'll have Rabbi Jonathan Klein.
Council President Garcetti, members of the council, I'm Reverend Mark Nakagawa, Senior Minister of Centenary United Methodist Church, right here in Little Tokyo and also in the 9th District. I come to you, before you, to speak in support of La Plaza Church and also in support of I believe, the recommendation that Councilmember Weezar's office will be bringing shortly. And I also want to speak about this issue, if I may, from the standpoint of the congregation I pastor, Centenary. This year is our 115th anniversary. This congregation started 115 years ago on Hewitt Street, not too far from here, but later on in its ministry was forced to move out of the downtown area due to the restrictive covenants that were enforced by the real estate agents at that time. We were on the corner of Normandy Avenue and 35th Street for over 50 years in South Central Los Angeles, and then back in the mid-'80s made the conscious effort to come back to downtown Los Angeles. Now, I'm sure many of you can recall that in addition to the last few years of the financial meltdown across this country, 25 years ago, people across the U.S. were not moving into downtown areas. If anything, they were tripping over themselves to leave downtown areas. We made the conscious effort to come back downtown to, once again, minister along with 3 other United Methodist congregations that have been here all along. First United Methodist Church on the corner of Olympic and Flower, La Plaza Church down on Olvera Street, and Chinese United Methodist Church right over here on Hill Street. The United Methodist Church never left downtown Los Angeles. We have stayed. We have stayed to weather the storms, to provide effective ministry when very other organizations chose to stay down here and tough it out. It is my hope and the hope of my United Methodist colleagues that La Plaza will be able to stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mark. Rabbi Jonathan Klein, if you'd like, come forward. After that will be Echo Park's finest, Reverend David Farley.
Mr. President, thank you for helping to facilitate that little snafu there. I apologize.
No, don't worry.
I want to just say that my name again is Rabbi Jonathan Klein. I'm obviously not a Methodist, but I want to express with great concern that we maintain La Plaza United Methodist Church. It's a very important institution. And unfortunately, when there are usage fees that create limitations of our ability to operate as a church, what it does is it creates a question of how we defend First Amendment freedom of religion. When we create draconian blockage to operation, it makes it very hard for this church to operate. Why would we put the burden we know that this city has a very tough budget situation, and it feels like to many of the people in this room right now that the backs of that the suffering of the city is being placed on as a burden on this church. Why would we attack the nonprofits to balance a budget? This is an historic church, been around for a long time. There aren't a lot of historic institutions in this city that have been preserved as lively, as energetically as this church. It's important that we keep these institutions alive. I want to also say that we know that times are hard. Churches are providing a respite from the storm. A lot of families are having a hard time right now. And here we have a church that provides safe haven for people to deal with the forces of dehumanization that come from unemployment, that come from poverty. We need to keep that standing. I stand here as a co-religionist, and I would just want to remind us the words of Martin Niemöller, who spoke about how they first come for the Methodists, they come for others. At some point it'll come down to other communities that are suffering, and as a religious person who supports the right of religious communities, I hope that you'll do what's right and support this church in its operations, that it can stand with strength. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend David Farley is next, and he will be followed by Rosalie Munoz.
By some coincidence, I'm a United Methodist pastor as well. I pastor a church not too far from here in Echo Park, Multicultural Church, and we've been blessed on many occasions to work in partnership with La Plaza in serving the people of the city, in celebrating its cultural richness, in advocating for the rights of the dispossessed, and in working on behalf of its poor and its marginalized. And I never imagined during that time that La Plaza's congregation itself would face being dispossessed and marginalized. That this historic community of Angelenos who have been in and of the heart of this city for generations could be treated so callously. This is not about some special treatment for a church. This is about basic respect for a community of living history whose story is not just Methodist, whose story is a Los Angeles story. A people who have hung in there in the heart of LA, in thick and thin, and who are now being treated like squatters and trespassers in their own church. A church in which their grandparents and parents, children and grandchildren have been baptized for free. So we ask that they be treated with a little more basic human decency and respect, that they get the keys, they could be trusted with this building, they know what to do, and that a fair and equitable lease be negotiated in good faith with La Plaza United Methodist Church. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Farley.
I'm going to defer to another speaker for our congregation. Just want to say we want our keys right now.
Right. Thank you. John Walsh is our next speaker. After Mr. Walsh will be Trey Basket.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, and I'm here proudly to say that not only is the religious community in favor of the United Methodist Church, not only are the Jews, not only are the Muslims, not only are the Christians, but I stand here as atheists for the United Methodist Church. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Trey is our next speaker. After that will be Jose Rodriguez.
Good morning. My name's Trey Baskett, and I'm not a Methodist minister, in a nod to the Reverend Farley and his great speech. Thank you very much. I am a resident of the city of Los Angeles. I work in the city. I own property in the city. I was married at La Plaza United Methodist Church. My wife, I'll borrow her lovely family's good name, the name of my in-laws. Enrique Naro was a pastor at that church in 1899, ladies and gentlemen. So you can see I'm an invested stakeholder in this process. And we're here today, you've heard a lot about the history of the church. We're here today to ask you to bring the strength of this council to bear on the process that will allow us a fair and reasonable lease. And I thank Councilman Huizar for bringing that forward, introducing that measure, and allowing us a voice here. So thank you very much, sir. Understand that the process is difficult, as you know. We have some problems with timeliness and the engagement of the management of the city, or disengagement, if you will, has been challenging at best, insulting at worst, unfortunately. The terms of the lease are troublesome. Unfortunately, we're not a retail business. We're not a restaurant. We don't have a menu, and we don't charge prices for certain items, and we don't have inventory on the racks that we skew into a cash register. These are not things we do as a church to serve the community. So we would appreciate, and I ask you in the strongest terms possible, to bring to bear the strength of this council here today on this process. Bring it out into the light. Let's make it transparent. Let's work on timeliness, please, some reasonable terms and a long-term lease, and some transparency. And I'm going to bring it home to each of you council members. All of you, probably, and the stakeholders and constituents of your districts have been served by the El Pueblo Monument for decades. All of you have people in your district that have lived there or passed through or related to in the past, even today, and the future generations who've been served by El Pueblo and this church as well. So we ask that you serve your constituency as well today in support of this lease process, and allow us our keys immediately, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Jose Rodriguez is our next speaker. After that is Shelley Morrison.
Good morning. My name is Jose. I'm the chairman of the Church Council at La Plaza United Methodist Church on historic Olvera Street. I'm standing here with my pastor and some of my members. We have been worshiping at this location on Olvera Street for every Sunday for about 112 years or so. On November the 14th of last year, we had a rededication service in our church. Some of you might have been there with us celebrating. A week later, on the 21st of November, your staff locked us out of Sunday worship. They would not allow us access into our worship service. We want to know why. We want to know why your employees have taken the keys to our church and that they're treating us unfairly and disrespectfully. Your employees instructed the security to lock us out. And with that act, they instantly barred the community evangelinos who have been worshiping in the same church for over a century. Your staff cannot deny our history in the city by treating us unfairly and disrespecting us. The history of our church is embedded in this community like USC is. USC was also funded by early Methodists in this city. This is a sample of what they have on the table as they negotiate for you. They would have us charge $3,000 per person for every person we baptize. A child, a new convert, that's what they would charge us for you, for the city. The Methodist Church doesn't charge for sacraments. Your city employees, your employees that run Olvera Street would have us charge $3,000 for a wedding, $3,000 for a quinceañera, any liturgical service. This is what your employees have on the table for you. Your employees would bar us from taking a free will offering. They jokingly said that they want a piece of our offering too.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. If you can conclude, we have to keep it even at 2 minutes per speaker.
Thank you.
Well, a lot of us gave up our time.
I'm sorry, we can't yield time. And it's not because of this group. If we do that, it becomes a precedent. But go ahead. And you can finish your last thought if you'd like to, sir, if you'd like to conclude.
Yes, you're going to give us your last thought.
My last thoughts is that we want you to instruct your city employees to give us the key to our church and to deal with a lease in a fair and equitable way. That's what we ask for.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your understanding as well. Shelley Morrison is our next speaker. After Shelley Morrison is Judy Napton.
All stand here. Shelley here. Let's all stand here. Shelley, let's all stand here.
Good morning, Ms. Morrison.
Talking for the Methodist Church. I'm a Sephardic, born in the Bronx. This church, how are you doing, honey? You look terrific. We've been in a lot of battles before. Oh, hi, David. How you doing? Oh, goodness, this is the heart and soul of this city. I want you all to remember how you felt when you decided to be a public servant, to serve the people. Just dig down inside and see how that feels. You've got all these people here and hundreds of others and thousands of others that have been helped through education, through food, through clothing. Thank you, Council Member Weezer, for bringing up this proposal and ending this madness. For 4 years, they have been giving us the runaround. We do what they tell us to do and then they change it. This is not fair. This is not fair, and you have the ability today to vote on this. To vote on this. Please dig down deep. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Judy Napton is our next speaker. After that will be Betty Venegas Hubner.
Good morning, and thank you, Councilman Weezer, for your leadership on this issue. I believe the City Council members here today understand their duty to uphold and respect the historic integrity of El Pueblo. I believe the City Council members here today understand that the United Methodist Church of El Pueblo was founded by this same church and has a moral and spiritual mission invaluable to the City of Los Angeles. Beyond the material value of the historic building, the church opened in 1926. The church has affirmed its intent to remain and carry on its spiritual mission as it has for over 100 years. I would urge all of you to affirm this place of sanctuary is not for sale to the highest bidder by virtue of a lease agreement which is reasonable, honorable, and sustainable by the church. I have faith that she'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Betty Venegas Hubner. After that will be Greg Ramirez.
Thank you. My name is Betty Venegas Hubner. I just want to tell you briefly one of the reasons why I love that church. I have been going there for many years, but when they closed the church last July 1st for remodeling, I used to go 3 or 4 times a week and be a docent in that church. I used to open the church for all these people. That's just up off on the Union Station. Tourists, travelers, the first place they walk out of the Union Station, they see the Catholic Church and they see the Protestant Church. You know, and that's the first thing all these tourists and people go to. They look for the churches, cathedrals. And I know a lot of the history of that church. My dad was a pastor there in the 60s, so I grew up knowing some of that history. I have papers that my dad left me on history on that church that goes way back. That is why I love that church, and I feel very fortunate, and I feel fascinated by seeing all these people coming to the church. You should see their eyes, how they're so fascinating to hear the history of how Los Angeles started. They don't have cars to go anywhere else, so of course they're going to go around our community. We have services there. We have had services for the federal department there. They had their Thanksgiving service. We've had memorials for the city. It's open to everyone in the community. Everybody that parks on the other side of the church, they come to our church, and they either walk in either to say they just want a prayer, they want peace, they just want something to guide them on their way home. I have talked to hundreds of people. I have trained a lot of these people on the history of the church, and they're also happy in telling the people how it started. And every time I read more, I learn more. And that's one of the reasons why I love that church. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Greg Ramirez? Is Greg Ramirez here? Oh, he's going to pass? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Marx Gutierrez? And then Bianca Guzman. How are you?
Good morning, council members. My name is Marx Gutierrez. I'm here representing SEIU United Service Workers West. We've always found the Methodist Church in general, and in particular Plaza United Methodist Church, to be accessible when we are fighting for justice for workers. They've always been there for us. They've always been on the right side of issues, speaking truth to power in the prophetic way that they need to do. And we thank them for that. We're here supporting them on this issue. In order for them to continue their ministries, they need their keys back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Bianca Guzman is next, and Armando Vasquez Ramos will follow.
Did you say Dr. Guzman?
I did.
That's me.
That's you.
So I'm speaking today as an educator. I'm a professor of Chicano Studies and a psychologist at California State University, Los Angeles. And I just want to talk to you about the youth that I teach in Introduction Chicano Studies. I know how much the United Methodist Church means in terms of having my students come and do assignments and learn the historical part of Los Angeles. And I would hate for that to be lost. And the church has also asked me to read a piece about profitability, so I'm going to try to do that in the time. The assumption is made that a Knott's Berry Farm or an LA Live will lead to profits, while in fact retaining the unique flavor really of Olvera Street, and this is what I say as a professor of Chicano Studies, will place actually more tourism for people who remember, who are people who can identify to how important Olvera Street is for the Chicano and Latino community. People are not really interested in another new high-rise building or in a new hotel or a new coffee shop. What they want is the history of Los Angeles, and that's what I intend to keep teaching the students and the younger generations. And I really hope that you can see it in your voting to provide a reasonable lease agreement and give them their key backs. They need their dignity back. And I want to also thank Councilmember Huizar for supporting the church in their fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Armando Vasquez Ramos, and then Father Richard Estrada.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Armando Vasquez Ramos, and I also teach at Cal State Long Beach in Chicano and Latino Studies. And I serve as the president of the board of the Mexican Cultural Institute. And on behalf of the Institute, I'm here to support the motion that would clearly define a timetable and what is right. We occupy the facilities, the Biscaluz building, which is a building that was built by the Methodists, and that also was the site for many years of the Mexican Consul General. I want to make sure that in this opportunity that we convey to you not only the historical context, but why the legacy of the Methodist Church is so important. We collaborate, we support each other as the Institute and the Church, and while the rehabilitation of the building was taking place, for several months, the Methodist Church services were held in the gallery of the Mexican Cultural Institute. The gallery and the basement of the church are actually connected. This is a building that was built, I believe, in 1924. And that in this occasion, I believe that you have the opportunity to do the right thing. We thank also Councilman Huizar for introducing this motion. I think this will definitely provide a solution. And we endorse the motion because it is late in coming, and I believe that it is written so that the keys are provided to the church to reoccupy permanently the facility while the negotiations are taking place. And also, while this takes place, that a viable agreement is written that will define a long-term relationship that will continue. Thank you very much.
Richard Estrada is our next speaker. After that is Walter Dominguez. Good to see you, Father.
Good morning. I'm Father Richard Estrada, a pastor of Our Lady Queen of Angels Catholic Church. La Placita, which is the center of the original site of the foundation of the El Pueblo de Los Ángeles de la Porcíncula, is located across the street from the Plaza United Methodist Church, another historic religious institution that has historically contributed to the city's poor. An example of this is they were a tenement house and a clinic for displaced people during the Great Depression. In the last 4 years, both religious institutions have collaborated in projects to develop lay leaders and civic leaders by teaching people how to organize in their communities through relationship building. We continue to feed the poor and are visible advocates for justice. We are also visible at activities at all the year-round celebrations of Olvera Street. We are very much an important part of this community. I'm here with other clergy from various interfaith institutions to denounce the very public treatment towards the members of La Plaza United Methodist Church by the city's development department of El Pueblo de Los Ángeles Historic Monument. I want to especially bring up the key issue, preventing the access to the church building by changing the locks without an attempt to negotiate a more dignified process is an abuse of power and must be stopped. We are the moral, religious leaders of this city, and we stand together to protect our constitutional freedom and our pastoral and social economic ministries of our institutions. We want to end this decade-long battle between the city officials and the tenants of the city's much-loved and historic Olvera Street. And we want the outcome to be fair, and most of all, and that all parties be professional and respectful towards each other. La Placita Catholic Church, the Plaza United Methodist Community, and the network of religious institutions are committed to work as a team to welcome and serve all people who visit the site, the historic site where the city's multicultural heritage began.
We appreciate you very much. And thank you. I think it's the toughest part of the job to cut off reverends, pastors, and rabbis, but I hope God will understand. Walter Dominguez is our last speaker.
Thank you. My grandfather was a Mexican immigrant who was hungry, homeless, and deathly ill on the Los Angeles Plaza in 1911. It was the La Plaza Methodist that found him, fed him, healed him, put him into a school, and gave him a career. He became a Methodist minister. I have a personal connection to this church that goes far back. I'm a filmmaker. I'm making a series about the early history of Los Angeles, which is long overdue. It is outrageous, it is insane, that one of the most historic churches in the entire country is on the verge of being evicted from the very church that they themselves built. If the city cannot find a way to keep this congregation where it belongs in its own home, then do the right thing. Forget the lease and sell them back the church that is theirs for a nominal fee. It can be done, and certainly a lease can be done that is fair for these people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for your testimony from the public. That will close the public hearing, and we'll recognize Mr. Huizar.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, let me thank everyone who came out and spoke today on behalf of this church who has been serving the city of Los Angeles for over a century. And certainly when I heard of the negotiations and the disrespect in locking out your congregation, I knew that this council had to put its full weight behind any solution that comes up. So let me say that the good news is that after 14 years, we are finally getting leases for the over 77 merchants that are on El Pueblo. And one thing we need to move forward with as well is to ensure that the city does its job as a landlord and work in good faith with the other tenants who are there to come up with leases. This church has been without a lease since 2006, and I'm hoping that through this motion we come up with a solution within 45 days that will get us an agreement that is mutually beneficial, but also recognizes the many contributions that this church has given to its congregation and the residents of the city of Los Angeles and others. But today, it is equally important that we find a solution that will give this church a key to the rightfully to their church. So with that, let me ask up to the table if we could have the general manager, the city attorney, the CAO and CLA, and we also have with us the fire department and building and safety. Now, through the through the retrofitting of the building, I understand that there were initially some issues with safety as to why the congregation wasn't let back in. Since then, we have a letter now from Building and Safety and the Fire Department that says it is safe to re-enter the building. Thank you for being here, Building and Safety and Fire Department. If we have any questions or any other council members have questions about the safety of re-entering the building, they are here to answer any questions. The larger issue is how do we allow for the church to have immediate access to the building so that they can serve their congregation. The 45 days we have to come up with an agreement, that'll happen in that process, and this motion is asking that my staff also be part of that negotiation. We'll come up with that, and I think hopefully we'll come up with something that's fair and reasonable. The immediate issue, as I see it, is how do we allow access for the church to re-enter the building and provide the services that they have been providing for over a century at this church. So with that, let me leave it up to either the general manager or the CLA.
Sure. Well, I hope that this is an amenable solution. We were working in the back, and the issue is that there is nothing right now that grants them access. And what we suggested is a simple right of entry while the negotiations are continuing. I took a look at the right of entry and working with city attorney and the general manager. It's actually a pretty complicated document, much more complicated than I think we need for purposes of getting them access to the facility until the negotiations are complete. So what we were discussing as a potential resolution would be a very simple right of entry. Now, in terms of charging, I mean, as you all know from special events issues, the city cannot subsidize religious activity. It's a violation of the separation of church and state. You can't waive fees for special events that involve religious activity. And I will say this has also been a consistent issue. I first became involved in Olvera Street back in 1998, and then City Attorney Hahn said that when the lease had expired that we inherited from the state, we could not enter into a $1 a year lease. So, in essence, what I would propose is the following, that they be given a right of entry that simply lays out some very basic charges, that a Sunday service would be $58, a public religious event would be $58. A private religious event, again, depending on the size, would be, around $29. And community services would be $29. That would be the charge. I think there was some confusion about what their ultimate rents are going to be. That would be the charge. So with those fees and with the indemnifications and insurance the city needs, I think we could proceed by the end of the week with a right of entry.
Okay. To the general manager, have you been in touch with the church, and would these charges, these basic charges, be sufficient to allow them for a right of entry?
Yeah, we have been in contact. In fact, we've been in negotiations with the church leadership since, I believe, November, since the commission authorized me back in 2010 November to begin working and negotiating an agreement with the Methodist Church. I should tell this body also that access to the church is permitted ongoing and has been. There was a minor glitch. However, security, if the church leadership wants to use the church in Sunday services, they continue every Sunday, and that's taking place. It's taking place now. So I think I answered your question, sir.
Yes, okay. So what the motion calls for, there's an amending motion that asks that we have an agreement within 45 days and report back to a public commission who approves these types of leases, and also instructs us to give them a key. What I will do is ask that we also amend that we give them the right of entry with these nominal charges, $58 for Sunday service, $58 for religious events, and $92 private religious events, and $29 for community service. That seems nominal, and that will last until we get a final agreement. Seems pretty reasonable until we could come up with a finalized agreement. The city attorney, would that pass legal muster?
We believe it is. It will, and we should be able to have an agreement sent out to all of the parties by Friday. That would be a much simpler right of entry that would, upon signing, allow them to get a key to the premises, and while we follow up with the directions of the City Council to negotiate a long-term agreement.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Sorry? There's more speakers on the queue?
Mr. LeBon, gentlemen.
Okay.
I just wanted to rise to support Mr. Weezer. I think it's real important. And Mr. Miller, today's Wednesday. Is there, you think we could give him the key by the end of this week?
Yes, the city attorney indicated that they can get a simple agreement to them by Friday, and as soon as it's signed, that they can get the key.
Good. And there has been things that the city has done for the church, right? There's been $750,000 spent of public money for asbestos. We all agree to that? Let's give the city a little love for that. I mean, that's important there. You gave the atheists more love than that. Let's give the city, which was founded there, more love than that. No disrespect to anyone who has no faith, but I wanted to say that. You also know that this church was sold by the state, so we all know this, sold by the state, sold to the state 50 years ago. And unfortunately, we're not here in this time, and all of a sudden it comes. So I hate to see what trauma people have been put through, but it's not like it happened yesterday. This has been going on for 50 years. What is good now is there's an opportunity again to open your doors. What's good now, there's an opportunity to recreate that luster that's so important. And our city attorney will tell you the Constitution of the United States is the greatest document, and that there should be separation of church and state, but not church and community. And you've been part of the community, so you absolutely should be back there on El Pueblo when this gets resolved. So I want to support Mr. Weezer in his efforts because it adds to what the flavor and the history. And no one of the public speakers did mention this, but I think if they would, and I think you're probably going to get Mr. Smith's vote, the greatest Methodist who came to Los Angeles formed the great University of Southern California. Is that correct? And just mention SC, you get 5 or 6 votes immediately around the chambers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. You've inspired.
And last, Reverend Lawson, it's great to see you, too, as Mr. Rosendahl spoke. When I see you, I see Mr. Bradley, and I see all the history of this city the last 40 years. Thank you for what you have done throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zine.
To the city attorney, are there any
extenuating circumstances that haven't been brought up regarding this? I think we all believe that people should be able to worship in a church without any infringement or intrusion by government, but is there anything unusual in this particular situation? I'm not that familiar with it, that has been brought to the light of the city attorney's office?
Nothing unusual. The unusual thing is that this is in fact a church, and of course the reason that we are engaged in negotiation with the Methodist Church is that they built the edifice. They have a historical presence here, which is why we're undertaking this. I think that the rents that we are proposing for religious services are defensible, and they are low, as Councilmember Huizar pointed out. That, in addition to the standard terms for any right of entry, should allow us to give them a key once the document is signed, and we will try to have that done by Friday.
Has there been a proposal for the church to be purchased by a group? Has the city entered in any discussion?
No. No.
Is there any interest on that part?
I believe that was turned over to us by the state as part of the El Pueblo department and area, and under the state's general plan, this is something that is ours to keep.
So they don't want, there's no proposal to sell the church to any group or any religious group?
No, absolutely not.
So the only agreement would be to have some type of rental arrangement?
All we need is some kind of rental arrangement to allow them back in.
And once this 45 days is up, we'll come up with a longer agreement where they'll be able to have some stability there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wesson.
Mr. Huizar, have you ever been a salesman? I've been a
I once went to this training to sell Ginzu knives, but I never continued that.
I've been a salesman when I was younger and relatively successful. And the first law of sales is when you've made the sale, you get them to sign the document. Okay. So I suggest we call for the vote, make all of these people laugh, make them happy, send them home, save the church, and I think we vote on it right now.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Thank you, Mr. Wesson. I'll take two. And Mr. Huizar is our final speaker.
Thank you.
To close.
Let me clarify what we're voting on. We're voting on the motion as originally stated, plus my amending motion, which clarifies points 1 and 2, just asking us to come back in 45 days with a final agreement. On item number 3, which asked them to give the key immediately, we asked that we do it with the right of entry as outlined with the fees that I mentioned earlier. I have them listed here for the clerk. So that would be a verbal motion. Could I have a second on that? Second by Ms. Hahn. And finally, let me say this. When I heard as well that we are charging for a religious event, I also had some discomfort with that. But let me say that's for the right of entry. On the final agreement, we need to discuss what the final agreement was state. This is only for the right of entry. We still need to keep open the agreement, and my office will be part of that as well. And let's close the deal, as Mr. Wesson says. So, colleagues, I ask for your aye vote on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. We did have one last speaker, Mr. Alarcon. You're on the queue. Did you want to speak? Okay, must have been an accident. So with that, let's go ahead and open the roll as amended. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Thank you all very much for your attendance and participation in today's meeting. And item 10, Mr. Alarcon, you want it out of order? We'll take that next. I'd like to recognize Mr. Alarcon on item number 10.
How many cards do you have? How many cards? There's only 2 cards, and they can. If I might move a 5-minute public hearing to allow 2 speakers on this item.
Okay, we've got 3 cards on this on item number 10. Ann Williams is our first speaker, and then Arnold Sachs will follow. And if we could respectfully ask folks just to keep their conversations to a minimum and take those just outside the chambers. Thank you for your understanding. Good morning, Ms. Williams.
Good morning, council members. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association, representing 450 businesses employing over 350,000 people in the Los Angeles region. This idea of creating a banking development district sounds innocuous and even useful at first blush. Using New York City as a model, the proposal would develop incentives to encourage banks to establish bricks and mortar locations in underbanked areas in order to encourage people to access mainstream banks and not rely on check cashing type outlets. But first, we want to emphasize that Los Angeles is not New York City. New York is the global banking capital with its own banking commission. The city has its own banking commission, and LA simply just does not have the administrative infrastructure to get involved in these kinds of banking issues at the city level. Second, and also unlike New York City, which builds on a state banking development district program, California's state legislation to develop a banking development district program was vetoed last year because there was no money for it. Not only was there no money for incentives, but there was no money even for the administration of the program. So for Los Angeles to move forward on its own without any statewide legal framework to build on would create an ad hoc patchwork of laws that is really terrible for businesses, for national businesses like banks, to try to operate within. And finally, given the budget landscape for the foreseeable future, we believe that if a banking development district program is developed in Los Angeles, what's being sold as incentives would quickly turn into mandates or penalties. For example, you can't open a branch in this part of town until you open a branch in that part of town. If the city does move forward with some sort of incentive program, we ask that the funds for the incentives be identified first. Thank you.
Arnold Sachs.
Yes, thank you. It's very interesting. You're holding public comment on this item and not on item number 9. But that being said, these districts that you want to create, there was a motion made by the hotels in downtown LA, I believe, or some of the hotels, to create an advertising district where they would have funds like a neighborhood improvement district. And my concern is like with the hotels, they're not paying the bed tax that is due to the city, but they're having funds to create an advertising district to promote in addition with LA, the LA Convention Center. That being said, you had an item on your agenda a year ago. You had a news conference outside regarding foreclosures. How about making a foreclosure district in the city of LA, where you have council districts divided up by foreclosures, where you can go after the banks that are overseeing the homes that are in foreclosure? That might work for the public. Shaking your head, mister. I'm just throwing out an idea. You know, we throw out ideas on this side of the podium. They get scorned at. You throw out ideas on that side of the podium, and it's like the skies are opening up with a halo. There's quite a difference in how you perceive what's being said.
I believe it is Giselle Marquez. Is it Giselle?
Good morning. My name is Giselle Marquez. I am a member from Dolores Mission. I'm part of LA Voice, a federation of 24 churches and synagogues in 6 LA City Council districts representing around 30,000 families. On behalf of LA Voice, families, many of whom who are low income and unbanked or underbanked, I am here to offer our support for the Banking Development District. Our community in Boyle Heights and many other communities of LA Voice have families who rely on payday lenders or cash economy instead of bank accounts. In my neighborhood, we have easiest access to local liquor stores, harder to find our quality groceries and mainstream banking institutions. even though studies show that financial institutions can make money on our money. In the Pew report on our city from 2010 showed that low-income families with bank accounts are twice as likely to save for the future than the unbanked. Savings serve as a safety net for families in tough times and allow them to plan for the future. The report also showed that people choose financial services based on physical convenience. 60% of low-income Angelenos reported this to be the main reason they choose where to get financial services. As the Pew study says, the failure of banking industry to reach out to communities like ours with products and services, we need calls for solutions that encourage safe, regulated, appropriate services, and that policies like this one can encourage banks to maintain branch offices in low and moderate income communities. We encourage all of you to support this, and we know we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no further speaker cards on this item, and Mr. Alarcon?
Council members, this motion simply establishes a task force to look at how to establish banking development districts in the city of Los Angeles. The fact of the matter is there are 300,000 Los Angeles households that do not have a checking account or a savings account. Not 300,000 people, but 300,000 households. They are relying on the check cashing outlets and the payday lenders to do their banking services, typically at a cost of $700 a year. Now, most of these families are making somewhere less than $20,000. Most of them, in fact, are probably making less than $10,000. $700 a year represents 7% of their income, and more if they're making less. So the idea here is, since we are holding the city's, the people of Los Angeles' money, it would seem that it would be prudent, and in fact it should be our responsibility, to use that money in a way that it benefits the people of Los Angeles. I'm not doing this against banks. I'm doing this because I think more people should be involved in banks. The fact is, we have 944 check cashing outlets in Los Angeles, 312 payday lenders, and only 694 bank and credit union branches. Something's wrong with that. And when you recognize that the check cashing institutions and the payday lenders are banking with the largest banks, it's a way for the banks to rip off the poorer communities in Los Angeles by charging exorbitant interest rates when, if they had a regular bank branch, they couldn't charge those exorbitant rates. So this is a way for us to use our money more wisely. Instead of putting our money into banks that we know are ripping us off with swap deals, ripping us off with bonding, finagling illegally, that the U.S. Attorney is going after on. Mr. Tutanich just held a press conference going after Deutsche Bank for ripping off our community. It's time that we stand up to these big banks and say, hey, we're not going to give you our deposits. We want to give them to banks that invest in our local communities. Now, if they're willing to do that in areas where they don't have many banks, then we'll identify funding that we can put deposits that are currently going into other banks. We can move small portions into some of these banks, as Mayor Bloomberg has done in New York. In fact, the city of New York sets aside $20 million a year to invest in small branches in banking development districts to ensure that those communities that don't have many banks to choose from will have opportunities to have a greater selection. This is good public policy, and I think that it's high time that we use our $30 billion portfolio, if you look at the pension system, our $6 billion portfolio, if you just look at the general fund resources, and use it in a way that it gives back to our communities. I want those 300,000 families to be banked. I want them to start savings account to get their kids an opportunity to go to college. I want them to be part of our economy. I want them to be part of our financial system, and I want them to be able to contribute more to our community. And I believe this measure sends a powerful message to do just that. And I appreciate your support. By the way, Mr. Reyes has a friendly amendment. I second it. It merely adds that he be consulted with as chair of planning, because as we design these banking development districts, we're going to have to know where those areas are bank poor.
All right, Mr. Alarcon's motion as amended by Mr. Reyes, and I believe Mr. Labange just pressed his
I just
button.
wanted to add something to it as Mr. Alarcon spoke. If you go back in Los Angeles, one thing that was very dominant 40 years ago, there were banks on every corner in every neighborhood. There were banks there. I know Washington and Vermont, because I worked at 1803 South Vermont in a print shop. There was Bank of America, Security Pacific, and one other bank. Similar, as you see, you go back, there were gas stations on all four corners sometimes. That is totally transformed. Now, whether this is right, we'll be told, but it's a great concept we've got to work for, to put institutions in the communities where the people live, to lower the overhead to live. That's what we want to try to do, to lower the overhead to live. And if this is not the formula, let's find another formula, because there's only 683 banks, and it's so many others are business money changers, which should not be. We should be in the business of helping people. This is the way to help people. Again, I don't know if this is the formula, Richard, but it's certainly the right idea, because banks should be in the community. And that also means, too, in the markets. And Mr. Reyes, you're a great one for land use. I know the Albertsons in Los Feliz has a Bank of America in that store that's busy all the time. Maybe that's a transformation, too, that we make sure they get into the neighborhoods in a dual use, because there's so much dual use, triple use, and some use, land use stuff. Thank you very much. Stand to support the next steps.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. I believe the motion is now before us as amended by Mr. Reyes. There are no additional speakers in the queue. So, Mr. Clerk, if you would please open the roll, close the roll, and then tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right. Thank you very much. Next matter of business?
Madam President, that brings us to item number 1, called special for cards.
All right, John Walsh.
This is item 1, hearing protests, Marshall Court and Sepulveda Street Lighting District, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org, emailing at HollywoodDems, DEMS, at gmail.com, and Facebooking at Mickey Jackson, MIKI Jackson. Present and adopt the accompanying ordinance confirming assessment. HollywoodHighlands.org supports it 100%. Visit us.
All right, no speakers in the queue on that item. Mr. Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item.
That brings us to item number 8, called special for Councilmember Labange.
Mr. Labange, and we do have one card. Dr. Williams. I'm sorry, the public hearing was satisfied in that matter?
Good.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Dr. Williams.
You know, this year, with the intense rains, what was ground cover, which was ankle high a few months ago, became knee high, hip high, shoulder high, and at some points, high above the height. The growth is great because of the rains, and we're right now in the season where lots are to be cleared, and the success of what would be the 4-year-old Griffith Park fire is a great clearance between the residential properties and the park property. That is through the Santa Monica Mountains. If Chief and Captain, if you want to give a brief report, so we all know the importance of this. Thank you. This goes from El Sereno west all the way through the Santa Monica Mountains, including the Baldwin Hills area, the rim of the valley, and other hillside areas.
Good morning. Mark Storms, Assistant Fire Marshal. I'm also here today with Captain Rob Knight of the Brush Clearance Unit. State of California has done a survey of the existing very high fire severity zone, and with the changes that have occurred in vegetation, the changes in development of certain parcels, the shape and size of the very high fire severity zone has increased. It'll be a total increase of about 6,700 parcels into the zone, and the changes have been represented on. We did bring a map with us with a breakdown by city council district. There will be no increase in the staffing for the brush clearance unit to manage this increase, and the survey does represent the changes in the vegetation bed and the fuel model that has been assessed by the state. It does take in considerations fire history, the fuel types, the weather of the area, and the topography. And it looks at the risk of a community as a wind-driven event occurs in that community.
Any other comments, Mr. Labange?
All right, members, I just wanted to bring this to our attention. Chief, let me know, what is the date that people should have their lots cleared by? June 1st or June 15th?
If it's okay, I'll let Cap Knight go through the whole process to remind everyone.
Captain Knight, I'm the captain in charge of the brush clearance program for the Fire Prevention Bureau for the Fire Department. Our brush clearance inspection sweep starts May 1st, so we've already begun. They started actually this Monday, May the 2nd. So we was encouraging property owners to get out there and clear their properties. Prior to that date, notices were sent out in the month of March informing them of that inspection that will take place so that the property will be in compliance throughout the entire brush clearance season, so we wouldn't have any problems.
When's the deadline they have to have it cleared?
When a property owner has received a notice of a violation, they're actually given 15 days to comply from that date of the notice of violation.
Just to let you know, I cleaned it's a small hillside area, but it grew back. It grew back because of the intensity of the soils, so there may be some double growth. We'll have to attack that as well. Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief. Captain, it's always good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange, and thank you very much to the Fire Department. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and then tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
That brings us to item 14, called special for Councilmember Alarcon.
All right, Mr. Reyes, I believe you wanted to say a few words first.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I just wanted to share with you that in committee, in Plum Committee, we had a robust discussion on this issue. We did hear from our planning staff the recommendation we can have planning staff come forward. The committee did agree to deny the appeal filed by Benjamin Willis, Silmar Homeowners Council, for the entire determination of the City Planning Commission, and thereby approving a conditional use permit to permit a public charter high school with 56 parking spaces in the RA zone and a 10-foot encroachment into the 37-foot building lying along Hubbard Street. Colleagues, we did discuss issues of circulation. We did discuss issues of compatibility. Will you just give us a summary of your decision in terms of factors you weighed and why you recommended what you did on that day?
Good morning, council members. Jay Kim with the planning staff.
The planning staff is allowed to come sit at the table, the middle table. Mr. Reyes, we do have cards. Do you want them to speak first, and then I'll call the cards, or?
I'd like to set the case.
Okay, got it.
The environment, the context,
Okay.
then we can go to the speakers.
Great.
Good morning. Jay Kim with the planning staff. This case went through the public hearing process, including 2 commission hearings, and some of the items that we had weighed in recommending to the commission and the commission approving this was the fact that even though this school is clustered between an elementary school and the Mission College along Hubbard, based on the traffic study that was weighed in as part of the MND, which was also adopted as part of the recommendation approval, staff had the approval was determined by the commission and has now since been appealed.
Jim Tokenog with City Planning Department. I just wanted to, I think a lot of the concerns have been with CEQA, and we feel confident that they have met the CEQA requirements. Conditional use schools are permitted in our zones through the conditional use process, which is what the applicants have gone through. The publication and questions have again come up about CEQA and the traffic study. Our Department of Transportation did review the traffic study. They are confident that there will be no traffic impacts with the school. The commission itself had some concerns. We imposed conditions such as the LEED certification, shading for the school students, a path to Mission College, and the park that the students will be using. There is a pedestrian light at the nearest intersection, so the City Planning Commission was confident that the proposed school has met the requirements of their guidelines. The Planning Commission is extremely concerned with school cases, as you know, and they felt that after the second time that the applicants came back that they had done all they could to propose a school that to their satisfaction.
And colleagues, we did have an extensive public hearing process. We did allow every speaker to have their time to give us their points of view. Councilman Huizar and Councilman Krikorian, we did have a robust discussion. We did talk about circulation impacts, trucks coming and going, public safety issues. We put a lot of weight on the council member of the district in their recommendation, and we firmly believe that we can move on this decision, and I would recommend an aye vote.
Mr. Alarcon.
Actually, Madam President, I'd like to ask that we waive the rules and allow several members from the community who are present, in addition to the proponent, to speak. So I move a 15-minute public hearing.
That's fine. I will call, let's see, there are very few people. Okay, let me just call Mr. Eugene Hernandez up. Mr. Hernandez is against the proposal. And then after Mr. Hernandez will be Mark Was. Is Mark Was here? And then after Mr. Was will be, I believe it's Mave Mejia? Is it Maeve? Okay, Maeve. All right. And then there are two cards that I'm assuming are on the other side of the issue.
And
Mr. City Attorney.
just a reminder, Madam President, this is a fair hearing matter requiring heightened attention by the council members to the speaker or to their monitors at their desks.
All right, so I would request that all members please be in their seats and give the speakers your undivided attention, as this is I believe, a quasi-judicial hearing. Is that correct, Mr. City Attorney?
In essence, it's a fair hearing matter.
This is a fair hearing matter. Please. All right. Thank you, Mr. Labange. If you can take your seat, please. That would be very helpful. Okay, we need all members in their seats. Thank you very much. All right. And if you would give the speakers your undivided attention. Thank you.
Thank you, City Council. I'm Eugene Hernandez, Vice President of the Homeowners Council. We believe that the mitigated negative declaration is not sufficient enough to deal with the environmental factors that have not been covered by a CEQA report or an EIR. For instance, the environmental impact on this property would cut over a dozen trees, some of which are endangered, which have endangered species such as hawks, owls, migrating birds, and wildlife. It will be a disaster in terms of traffic, because what is not included in the mitigated report is the fact that there's going to be a mining operation going on in Pacoima Dam, together with the construction going on in Mission College, which would not been included into the a true traffic report that should have been done independently. I myself have suffered in my home on Eldridge and Hubbard 3 collisions that have broke my block wall. There's been children who have been run over there. Remember, the school is less than 20 yards from 1,200 students at Hubbard Elementary. Furthermore, there is the situation that this is not just opposed by the homeowners council. It's opposed by the Sylmar Neighborhood Council, by UTLA, by the principals and staff of Hubbard Elementary, Sylmar High School, by LA Unified School District Board member Nuri Martinez, and 500 members of the community. Also, I have a letter here from the Associated Student Organization of Mission College. This proposed site will be directly across the street from a college that has 11,000 students going to 19,000. The traffic situation is unmitigated. We asked for an extension of 1 month to deal with these issues and to issue an EIR. We feel that there's been inadequate representation. Mr. Kim has given inadequate representation to the community. He has canceled hearings without notice. He has violated, the Planning Commission has violated a right to we didn't even get the negative mitigated declaration until we asked for it, and then it was put online. So there's been a whole process that has not been going on. Are you going to ignore the fact that so many organizations, so many people in the community don't want the school, and the only person who wants the school is the owner? I hope that you restore a public trust, that we as citizens are not beholden to developers and the money that they can yield in doing these developments, that our voice counts for something, that the charter changes that were done for neighborhood councils to allow their input means something, and not just words. We have not had a due process, and we ask that we do have this, and that you ask for a continuation and for a CEQA report and a EIR. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, if you would identify yourself when you come to the mic.
My name is Mark Ross. I want to address the issue of the student safety as they walk to school. This part of Sylmar has old properties that they never had sidewalks. Their properties jut into what is Hubbard. Now, this is going to be right in the middle of that. But the properties still on the side still don't have adequate walkways. So you're going to have this thing kind of going in and out based on what's on Hubbard Street. All these things that were mitigated and everything else that went through this. At the very first land use meeting, one of the land use commissioners, he'd been out there. He saw how many people were going to be on this postage stamp sized lot, and all the things about where they were going to have space to sit when they had lunch, 1,500 square feet for 270 students. He realized that that's not adequate. He realized the whole thing was wrong, and he was going to vote against it. Then when he realized, when they was told that there was only 4 more people on the commission that day and that it would have failed, then they rejiggered everything and they had a new vote, and then it was passed. He knew it was bogus. He knew it was the wrong place for this school. It should be moved, should be redone. Thank you.
Next speaker, if you would identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Maria Mejia, and I'm the attorney representing the Sylmar Homeowners Association. I'd like to request several things. First of all, we ask for a continuance of approximately 3 weeks so that we can properly review the record in this case and submit additional comments for our concerns. There has been inadequate project notice with respect to this project. For example, there was a notice posted on the fence on the project side, and it had the wrong date for the Plum Committee hearing and this City Council hearing. It had an earlier April date and then a later April date, which were incorrect because, as you know, this hearing was scheduled for today, May 4th. And the specifics are in the letter dated today that I hand-delivered today to the city clerk's office for distribution. Second point is a fair argument exists that a fair argument exists that an EIR is required. Now, we haven't had much time because the M&D was actually put online in April. The document was signed last year in 2010, but was not put online until April 2011, just around 2 weeks before the April 26th hearing. In addition, the project violates CEQA. For example, mitigation is inadequate. There is inadequate disclosure, insufficient. The M&D doesn't give specifics. It defers review to a later point. It doesn't adequately address traffic issues. Several residents have submitted photographs and letters, and a fair argument exists that an EIR is required. Furthermore, when insufficient environmental information is disclosed on a proposed project, that lowers the threshold of the fair argument requiring an EIR, and that is the case here. One specific example can be regarding biological resources. There is wildlife around the project site, coyotes, mule deer, cottontail rabbits, hawks, and so forth, and those have not been specifically identified in the MND. In addition, the MND states that there are approximately 63 trees on the project site, but it doesn't state the diameter of the trees. These are mature trees, so they are not small trees, tall trees, and it doesn't identify the species. As we all know, there are protected trees, such as oak trees, and none of the trees are identified. So that's just another example of the insufficiency of the MND in terms of disclosure and mitigation. Briefly, water. The water source for the project has not been identified, and neither has the amount of water required for the project. The project doesn't comply with zoning requirements. It's in an RA zone, and a CUP is being requested. Well, the city cannot comply with the CUP because they haven't done the proper environmental analysis. So the CEQA review affects every project, every part of the project. Cumulative impacts, those have not been adequately disclosed or discussed. For example, about 3 or 4 blocks away is a proposed mining site. That hasn't been disclosed, and it hasn't been analyzed, and it hasn't been mitigated. CEQA requires that potential projects around the project facility be disclosed. That has not happened here. Again, the CUP cannot be issued because proper review and analysis has not been conducted, and the CUB purports to have complied with CEQA, but for all these reasons and all the other reasons in the record submitted at the hearings and letters and verbally, these requirements have not been met. Lastly, I just ask that the city, again, give us at least a 3-week continuance so that we can provide additional documents and review what has not been made publicly available thus far, set aside the M&D approval, require an EIR, and set aside the CUP approval. Thank you for your time. Oh, there is one more speaker whose name was not read. His name is
Benjamin Williams?
Yes, may he come up?
He marked his card as being for the proposal?
Oh, he's actually against it.
Okay, all right.
May he come up?
Yes, Mr. Williams, Benjamin Williams. Just to clarify from his own words, Mr. Williams, are you coming up and you're speaking against the proposal? Mr. Williams?
Good morning, Councilman. We've been on this battle for 1.5 years.
Just to clarify, sir, are you speaking against the proposal?
I'm speaking against it.
Okay, because on your card you marked that you were for...
I'm so sorry. I
Okay.
apologize for that. I read the paper, and I thank all of you for your diligent work that you're doing, and I know you have some big problems. We all know that, and we could keep up with you on a daily basis. The only thing we're asking you, and I am the president of this particular council, and I have been working diligently with Mr. Alakhan's office, and Mr. Alakhan knows that the only thing that counts is those shovels coming in there and those big bulldozers coming in there, breaking ground, disregardless of our children. I have children in the neighborhood, and our members have children in the neighborhood, and I'm representing 72,000 members of our neighborhood. And Mr. Alakhan was elected because we loved him. And he's against bulldozers coming in there, tearing down that property without thinking about our children. You should look at the plans for the school. We spent over $2,000 to give you an appeal, and I know you have it on your desk. And we gave you this today. What we're asking you to do is don't yield to bulldozers instead of our children being given an adequate building to go into, an adequate space. Listen, they don't have ADA, and all of you know what Americans with Disability Act is. They don't have a thing in there that complies with it. Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Next thing, they don't have one way for a child to get up to the second floor. Look at the plans. We are not against charter schools, but they have to meet every other requirement in the nation for adequacy under Title I, Title II, and 504. They can't get around it just because, we're private, independent schools. No, you're not. You have to, and every lawyer sitting on your desk, around your desk, know that they can't go in there and say that, we're a charter school, we don't have to meet the requirements. You are a public school, you take my taxpayers' money. You take parts from the federal government, you get ADA from the city. Here's another thing, sirs and madams. They do not have a permit from the Los Angeles Unified School District, which they should have come before a board and got a permit. So they would have known that they have an adequate program in education. They didn't do that. Mrs. Neri Martinez, who you know very well on our board, has said you didn't follow the procedure to get a permit. So that's what they're trying to do. They tried to go around her, and they have run into us. And we're saying, we need your support. And Mr. Alakhan's office has supported us because he wants the best for our children. We have 4 high schools right in that area. 2 are brand new. They opened up in September. And we have a private school right up the street from there, exactly 2 blocks. They are available. So we don't need them to rush in there at the expense of our children, and they don't have adequate facilities for them. And I thank you so very much.
All right, I have one more card, and I can't tell whether he is for or against this proposal because he didn't mark it, but his name is Greg Brendel. Is Mr. Brendel still present? You're representing Campus USA?
Yes, Madam President. I am the applicant in this particular matter, and thank you, distinguished council members, for hearing me today. I could take a lot of time today and argue a lot of the accusations that have been made by the opposition, but in any event, any school that's built in the city of Los Angeles that goes through the Los Angeles Planning Department and through the Building Department is going to comply with all governmental regulations, whether they be ADA, whether they be trees on site, and in the case of this particular project, all of those requirements have been met. And anyway, they have been met. We began this process, has been said, in June of 2009. We're coming up to a place where it's been 2 years. We've gone through the process of appearing before the Neighborhood Land Use Committee and obtained approval. We've gone through 2 Planning Commission hearings and have obtained unanimous approval. We've gone through the Plum Committee and have obtained approval. And now we're here today for this matter, hopefully to be finally heard.
Mr. City Attorney, since I wasn't... Yeah, all right. Why don't we go for another 3 minutes because I wasn't clear whether you were for or against, so you can keep going.
Yes, ma'am. when we began this process, we had financing in place to finance this school. This school is not financed with taxpayer dollars. This school is financed by a 501c3 company who believes in providing great education for the children in communities. And we, at that particular time, had approximately $10 million of financing approved. During this long planning process, we lost that financing. Earlier, at the end of last year, we were able to obtain refinancing through Goldman Sachs to finance this project. When we went through our second Planning Commission hearing, and between the Planning Commission hearing when the appeal was filed, we lost that $10 million of financing. We're now at a point in time where we have one financing opportunity left, and that financing opportunity will make a decision next week. And that financing opportunity is based upon whether or not all the entitlements for this project have been obtained in a proper and legal manner. So without your approval, we're not going to have a school here. The other thing that's happened during this period of time is interest rates have gone from 6% to 8%. The financing opportunity that we have is a private investment firm in Newport Beach who's offering to finance this school at the 6% interest rate that it needs to finance and be able to, for the school to pay for this financing. Those are very important issues for us. If we do not approve this site as a school, then we're going to be forced to look at another alternative site, which means we need to come back and create an affordable housing project on this site. The impacts of that affordable housing project can be much greater than the impact of this school. We would end up putting between 49 and 58 living units on this site at what the current zoning and general plan allows. We really would like to see you decline the appeals today and allow us to proceed with the development of this school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Alarcon.
Yes. First, I would like to ask the Planning Department to respond to the appellant's concerns that have been raised, particularly with regard to the CEQA issues.
Jim Tokunaga with the City Planning Department. Yes, appellants are requesting an environmental impact report. However, to satisfy the California Environmental Quality Act, the city issued a mitigated negative declaration, which is an acceptable CEQA clearance. The difference is that environmental impact reports are required for those projects where the impacts, unavoidable impacts, cannot be mitigated. In other words, there's no mitigation measures for them. In this particular project, there were impacts, but they cannot be mitigated or taken care of. So, and therefore, we feel that the EIR is not required and that the MND is the appropriate CEQA clearance.
Council members, this is, you all dealt with some of these decisions. They're very difficult at times. Weighing a school, providing educational opportunities to a community versus not providing educational opportunities. It's always a tough decision, particularly when it imposes on the community impacts. In this particular case, we're talking about a community where 40% of Sylmar is east of the 210 freeway. It is, and Mr. Smith well knows, it is divided very severely by the 210 freeway. So the kids, the one question that you should ask yourself is, if the kids aren't going to a school here, where are they going to school? The obvious answer is Sylmar High School, which is 2 miles away and across the freeway. In terms of the impacts, you don't have to be a planner to know that the kids are going to be going to school locally as opposed to going 2 miles away, and the impacts that come with that on the general community of Sylmar. Many of the people who have opposed this project are people who oppose Mission College. They're the same neighbors who didn't think that Mission College should come to Sylmar. And the vast majority of people in Sylmar agree that they wanted to have the opportunity for college education in Sylmar. The community college district itself didn't want to put the college there. They said that those people don't go to college. Well, in fact, Mission College quickly became one of the fastest growing community colleges in the state of California and is doing very well. Thank you very much. Our decision is not based on education. Our decision today is based on land use. I give you that sort of as a backdrop to some of the other considerations that I've had to make, but as a land use decision, we have to look at our professionals and say, what is it what are the impacts going to be? Is it Mr. Kim? Mr. Kim actually went out and looked at traffic for 2 hours to see whether or not this would have a negative impact. And he said no. And frankly, when that got back to me, I was surprised. I was surprised because I felt that there were going to be more negative impacts, and he actually counted the cars. I also want to remind you that the request is a phased-in project, where 25% of the student population would be phased in every year. So it's over 4 years. Now, if there are some of the disruptions and some of the concerns that some of the community members have raised that do occur, then I'll be first to join with them to jump into it and work hard to mitigate against whatever occurs. But frankly, the community of Sylmar is served currently by a public school at Sylmar High that is one of the lowest performers in the San Fernando Valley. I think that people of Sylmar, the children of Sylmar in particular, when you talk about my concerns about the children as a former teacher, I believe the children in Sylmar need other options for education. It's not to criticize my friends at Sylmar High who have worked with us on many, many projects. It's only to say that some of our high schools are just too big, and we need to have smaller schools. I've been an advocate for that since I was in college, and I believe that is one of the issues here. Yes, there will be a mining operation. A mining operation is proposed. That's one of the concerns. That mining project will happen sometime after, if ever, I'm out of office. Because I've already told that developer, that operator, that ain't going to happen while I'm in office. There's no way they want to do strip mining above Sylmar in the county area, but they would have to drive the trucks through some city streets. It ain't going to happen. We've already sent a letter to Supervisor Antonovich saying that I will fight it with all the force that I can muster to stop that project. And the operator has told my staff that they will not move forward without working with my office, and I've made it very clear to them I will not allow those trucks to come through Sylmar. So, all things considered, and there's a lot of small and complicated items. I believe that this operator, this school developer, has really met the community more than halfway. I should mention there is substantial support and petitions in favor of the project in Sylmar. There are people in the community that believe they need better education in Sylmar. And by the way, with regard to the other charter school that is proposed on the border of San Fernando, I support that project. Again, I believe that if you support that project, you got to support this one. If you support this one, you got to support that one because they are smaller schools, and I believe with a greater focus they will have greater academic success. But again, on the issues of land use, I believe the Planning Department has really worked hard to address the issues that were raised by the community, at the same time balancing the rights of the person who owns the property and will develop the site. And I believe they've done a good job of that. Now, I want to, Eugene and I go back to the Chicano movement, honestly. We actually went to college together, studied for teacher training together. I know he has a tremendous interest in education. My only commitment to you is that keep your eyes on it. And if in fact the project does not do well, and it does some of the things that you say in terms of negative impact on the community, I will be with you to work next year at the soonest point possible, if assuming the council approves this today, to work to either mitigate what the negative impacts are or shut the project down. I mean, that's the bottom line. My goal is not to shut them down. My goal is to see them be a good operator. I would mention, just as a side note, I went to a high school of 760 students in the middle of Panorama City, surrounded by residential, much more dense than this, and it is one of the key players in the Panorama City community. They just won the National Character Award, which is the Columbine Award. It's a tremendous school that's been there for about 40 or 50 years. And it hasn't created negative impact on the community. It has provided opportunities for small school educational opportunities, academic advancement, and many more kids, I believe, will establish opportunity pathways to college. And by the way, having mentioned that, let me finally say, Mission College has already, is sort of, I don't want to say excited, but they are looking at the opportunity to work with this school so that these kids will actually get college classes while they're going to high school. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity to increase the number of kids that come out of Sylmar who get college-going opportunities. And for all of those reasons, as much as I understand the concerns that are being raised by the community, by some of the members of the community, it goes both ways, as usually these issues do. But with all of that, I have to support the project because I believe it will be good for the kids, be good for the future of Sylmar, and I will work to make sure that I'm right. Hopefully, we don't have to backtrack. But in the past, we have, on occasion, gone back and fixed projects where they went too far. Madam President, I apologize for overstepping my welcome, but thank you for allowing me to speak.
You're always welcome. And Mr. Reyes?
Yeah, for the record, colleagues, given that this is a semi-judicious process, there were some assertions made that I want to make sure we respond. One is that the size of the lot, the proportions of the classrooms, are they adequate or are they not adequate given the number of students being targeted for this facility?
Based on our experience with charter schools, that is within the range of what we have dealt with in terms of lot size. The number of students within this building, which is about 27,000 square foot for the...
So we're not creating any duress to the students and or the teachers given the size of the lot that's been proposed?
Correct.
Okay. Last question, and perhaps Councilman Alarcon can help us on this. In terms of a petition support from the local neighborhood, from the area, is there a number out there that we can speak to? Because we've heard from the community who are against it, but my assumptions are that there has been community folks that are supporting it. Is there a ballpark figure out there?
I can tell you that 70 people have expressed support in writing through a petition that the applicant submitted, also the Sylmar Chamber of Commerce. It's a divided, the Land Use Committee of the Neighborhood Council supported it, but the Neighborhood Council as a whole did not. But it was divided. There were people in favor, people against.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Reyes and Mr. Alarcon. And now let's please open the roll on this item. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
Item 15, called special for cards.
All right. John Walsh.
Wake up, John.
Mr. Walsh.
This is the REAP, HollywoodHighlands.org. These are the errant landlords who are now being taken back into the fold. And we support it. And we'd like to point out $3,000 for a baptism at your church. HollywoodHighlands.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No speakers on the queue. Please open the roll, Mr. Clerk. Close the roll. Then tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
Item 16, called special for cards.
Mr. Arnold Sachs is our speaker. Mr. Sachs.
Oh, how wonderful. Thank you for starting the time. Like the 15 minutes that the speakers had, and they got a chance to adjust their time. We don't get that chance. This agreement with the Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles, the CCSCLA, would that be a nonprofit organization that's going to be running this school? Is this a charter school? It's not a charter school. It is a charter school. Dorothy V. Johnson Opportunity High School. It doesn't say whether it's a charter school or not. So again, is this a nonprofit organization? Because according to something I heard at the County Board of Supervisors, nonprofits don't have to have open meetings with an agenda. That also being said, this is for $760,000. Item 17 is for synthetic turf sports fields, and 2 fields, each one getting $500,000. That's just a difference of $260,000 and change. So are they getting a bigger field at this school? Are they getting better synthetic turf at this school? Why would there be a huge, almost a 50% hike in the cost for the synthetic turf field at this one particular school, whereas the 2 LA charter schools each are getting turf for $500,000? And again, could that have anything to do with the fact that this would be a nonprofit running this Dorothy V. Johnson Opportunity High School? Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, there's no speakers in the queue.
Madam President, if the gentleman would like to come to the ropes, I'll ask his question to the department staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and then tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
Item 22, called special for Councilmember Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to add an instruction to that item, which is a workers' comp case, that we ask that the city attorney report back to the claims board on the disposition of negotiations with the firm SpaceX in their effort to join SpaceX into this settlement.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Mr. Clerk, should we note that as a motion or an instruction or a...
That could be included in the instruction, and then we would vote on it.
All right, thanks, Mr. Parks. That'll be included in the instruction. Please open the roll, close the roll, and then tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
That brings us to item number 23, called special for cards.
Okay. John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org, emailing at HollywoodDems, DEMS, gmail.com. I've been 24 hours waiting for this. You'll see on the agenda it says lost quorum, left on desk. So there was no... our council president disappeared, and Oscar Garcetti, but this has to do with the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I wonder if Mr. Labange can tell me Jane Morgan, if he can tell me Jane Morgan's big hit record. I'm waiting to see whether he knows, because he knows all these. This is a very famous singer, and that would have been Fascination from the 1950s. He lost a couple of points. I wish that you would put on these agenda items for the stars when the unveiling will be, because sometimes you vote on them after the unveiling. Sometimes you don't, HollywoodHighlands.org. And I like to point out that Hollywood Boulevard is actually much better now, because the Cave Theater, a pornographic theater, which had been on Hollywood Boulevard by 40 years, apparently Mr. Labange might not know it, but we're celebrating, it finally closed down. Yes, the Internet is destroying pornography on Hollywood Boulevard. And I want to finish. If you want to come to Hollywood and you're interested in hardcore pornography, fisting, men, women, bestiality, there's only one place to go.
That's
the
enough.
Hollywood Public.
All right, thank you. Good night. Goodbye. Thank you. Mr. Parks, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, we're in the continuation agenda. Could I get 25 reconsidered so we can ask for public support on the reward motion?
Certainly. Let me vote on this item first, and Mr. Walsh is done for today. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right. Mr. Parks, you want to do a motion for reconsideration on item number...
25.
Item number 25. Please open the roll on reconsideration for 25. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
25 is now before us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's for public support in assisting the Los Angeles Police Department in solving a case. On March 7, 2011, approximately 1:20 a.m., victim Commodore Lenore, a 29-year-old male, was shot multiple times in front of 2000 West Manchester Boulevard. LAPD is still searching for the suspects. Encourage witnesses to come forward. The contact would be, and subsequently the victim succumbed to these injuries. The contact would be Detective Dean Villoan of the Criminal Gang Homicide Division, 213-485-1383, and we're asking for a $50,000 reward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. All right, let's open the roll on this item, then close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, next item.
Madam President, that brings us to item number 24, called Special for Cards.
Arnold Sachs is our first speaker. You have 1 minute left for today, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Walsh put in a card, but he has no time left for today.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon again, Arnold Sachs. This ordinance to establish regulations will include a fine, I hope, but I'm just wondering, because this is under the auspices of the LADOT, and since we just read about an audit that claims that LADOT is not collecting like $15 million, will there be a amendment that will allow for them to collect the funds that may be generated by fines that may be created by people putting these for sale signs on their vehicles in areas that they're no longer allowed in? Because that will just increase the amount of money that's not being collected that would go towards the general fund. Again, will there be some kind of vehicle, no pun intended, that will allow for LADOT to have enforcement policies that will allow for the collections of any fines that are collected or created from this policy?
Mr. Sachs. All right. Let's open the roll on this item. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right. Next item.
Madam President, council has motions for posting and referral.
Motions are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Rosendahl requests to be excused on May 20th due to city business that meets council policy.
Without objection.
Councilmember Labange requests to be excused on May 6th due to city business. A motion is required.
All right, that'll be without objection.
Councilmember Reyes requests to be excused on May 6th due to city business. A motion is required.
Mr. Huizar moves, Mr. Koretz seconds.
Councilmember Huizar requests to be excused on August 2nd due to personal business that meets council policy.
Mr. Rosendahl moves, Mr. Reyes seconds.
And Councilmember Perry requests to leave at 11 a.m. on June 28 due to city business that meets council policy.
Okay, that'll be without objection.
The desk is clear.
All right, members, are there any announcements? Any announcements? Mr. Parks.
Just to notify, the Budget and Finance Committee meeting will be held in this room at 1:30.
Thank you very much. Members, any other announcements? Any other announcements, members? All right, are there any adjourning motions? If you would please rise for adjourning motions.
Richard.
Mr. Labange.
The thing I would want to say as we think in this week, just remember all the victims of 9/11 and terrorism throughout the world, so that we think of them this day and every day. In addition to that, Madam President, I ask we adjourn member Sheila Coran McDonald, a longtime resident of the Los Feliz area, passed away quietly this Monday. She was 70 years old. She was born and raised in our city, and for the last 45 years raising her children, and was a great parishioner of our Mother of Good Counsel Catholic Church, as well as a great contributor as a spirited person to Loyola High School. She is survived by her 2 children, as we adjourn in memory of Sheila Coran McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Cliff Lazar, who died at age 72, a longtime resident of the Castle Heights area in my district. Passed away on April 30th of anaplastic thyroid cancer. He was a former professor at Santa Monica City College and USC. He was a brilliant man who was a scientist and inventor and worked on various ideas and patents throughout his life. He was also an astute businessman and the CEO of Lazard Developments. He was well known for a love of tennis and an interest in politics, which surrounded him with a very diverse and interesting group of friends. His longtime community involvement included a run for the Los Angeles Board of Education a number of years ago. He was survived by his son, Eric Lazar, his 2 brothers, Dennis and Les Lazar, and funeral arrangements will be held at 10 a.m. on Thursday, May 5th at Hillside Memorial Park.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Alarcon, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, I want to adjourn in memory of a very dear friend, Esperanza Ramirez Negrete, who passed away at the age of 83 on April 19, 2011, due to complications related to dialysis treatment. I say she was a very good friend. My sister was actually married to one of her sons for 26 years, and so since I was about 16 or 15 years old, I've participated in Negrete family events and have interrelated with them on many different levels. Esperanza was actually the sort of unappointed chairperson of my the Comadre Network, which was an ad hoc group that we created on my very first campaign to help volunteer in the office. And she actually headed up a group of about a dozen women that came in and helped do so many different things. But she was the inspiration. Her name was Esperanza, which means hope, and she was actually inspirational in that regard to the campaign. Very passionate about her roots. She was born in Tehachapi, California in 1927 to Maria and Jesus Ramirez. She worked as a ranch hand at El Rancho in Mexicali, Baja California. She also worked as a farm worker in California. In 1948, she married Joe Negrete. They had 4 sons, Joe, Leonard, Abel, and Arthur, and 2 daughters, Lydia, who preceded her in death, and Irene. She worked as a head cook. Many of you probably have eaten her cooking. If any of you have ever eaten at Your Chef in North Hollywood, which is right there in the Valley Plaza, she was the lead cook, and that's why I always participated in their family events, because there was always great food. She worked there for 28 years. She and her family were very involved in various community groups, including Kutu Aztlan, which produced the Dia de los Muertos at the Brand Park for many, many years. The Northeast San Fernando Valley Friends of Memory Gardens, which restored the gardens across from San Fernando Mission. And I have to tell you, if it were not for the efforts of that group, which she was one of the leaders of, the park was in such disrepair, and it is now a beautiful location where many, many people go every weekend to take pictures for their quinceañeras and weddings and other family events. She and her family were always, as I said, very supportive of my campaigns and my efforts. I can't say enough for the friendship that I have for her in particular, and all of her family members, some of whom I went to high school with. She had 17 grandchildren and many, many great-grandchildren. She will be truly missed. She lived a good life, and as I said, her name means hope. She provided hope to her family, which she was absolutely loyal to every day. today that she had the opportunity to do something for them. I ask that we send our condolences to the family members. May she rest in peace. Her memorial services will be Friday, May 6th. At 5 o'clock the viewing, 7 o'clock the rosary at Mission Hills Catholic Mortuary. Her funeral mass will be Saturday, May 7th at San Fernando Mission.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parks?
Thank you, Madam President. I have two adjourning motions. First, I'd like to adjourn in memory of Verena Skinner Todd, who was born in 1911, passed away in March of 2011. She is a graduate of East Tech High School in Cleveland, Ohio. In 1940, she became the first woman of color hired as a legal assistant in the War's Asset Administration, where she worked for 2 years. She was also the first woman of color to be hired as a legal assistant in the National Labor Relations Board. She was a staunch Democrat throughout her adult life. She also, as one of her major life dream, holds a picture of President Obama as her the culmination of his election that she kept in her residence. She is also committed to young people and understands the importance of education. She continues to support education by donating her body to the USC School of Medicine. She was raised as a Christian. She sang in the church choir at St. John African Methodist Episcopal Church, and also she was a member of the Senior Citizen Volunteer and received awards and letters from the White House for her many years of volunteer service. She was survived by her daughter Joanne and Beverly. And many of you may remember we honored Beverly as part of one of our Friday ceremonies recently, Beverly Todd, an actress. Her memorial service will take place Sunday, May 29th, at the First Presbyterian Church of Inglewood, located at 100 North Hillcrest Boulevard in Inglewood. Also, to ask that we adjourn in memory of Gwendolyn Maggi, who focused on African American history and culture. She passed away April 2011 at the age of 67. She's a native of North Carolina, lived in Mississippi since 1972, was among recently the 5 honorees in the 2011 Governor's Award for Excellence in Art. She worked where her works were displayed or collected by the Smithsonian, the Mississippi Museum of Art, and also the Reginald Lewis Museum of African American History. She was working on a commissioned piece at the time of her death where she was completing a Freedom Rider quilt for display in Montgomery, Alabama. It is currently unfinished. In 1995, she was the first year she began to consider her work actually art, in which she was featured in many books and also solo exhibit, The Journey of Spirit, The Art of Gwendolyn Maggi. She toured for 2 years to 10 venues and accompanied by a monogram on the same title. Our memorial services are set for 5 p.m. May 6th in Mississippi Museum of Art.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Mr. Garcetti?
Thank you. Colleagues, I ask that we adjourn today in memory of Lorenzo M. Raphael Smith, who was the son of Otavia Smith in our city clerk's office. Born on August 25th, 1988 in Carbondale, Illinois, he moved with his mother here to Los Angeles in 1991. Lorenzo was employed by Homeboy Industries, began his employment in October 2010. Within 3 months, he was promoted to the finance department. And Lorenzo loved Homeboy Industries and was very proud to be an employee of a place that had the motto, jobs, not jail. He enjoyed life and loved living life to the fullest, was taken way too early from us all, and especially his family. Services were held last week on Thursday, April 28th at 2011 at Simpson's Family Mortuary in Inglewood. He's survived by his mother and stepfather, Otavia and John, father and stepmother, Alfonso and Linda, brothers Gerald and John, sisters Laturia, Alice, Don Quinta, and Letitia, and a host of aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends. We all remember Lorenzo M. Raphael Smith. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Are there any other adjourning motions? All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.